Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 5 of the Schwep Fantasy Football Podcast. As many of you know by now, I am one of your hosts and current champion of the Schwep Universe, and I am gathered here today with my two other co-hosts, Mr. Austin Cranz and my newest and greatest co-host, Mr. Ray-Bans. It's great to have you guys. I hope everybody's doing well. I know on this side of town, I'm the 3-1 guy in the podcast, so life feels pretty good about now. I got a 1-3 guy over here, and I got a 2-2 guy. So, Austin, how are we doing today, my friend?
It's great to be back with the champ, week 5 again. I'm hype. I finally won a game. Shout out to the Rosie Voodoo curse. We took a dub after he predicted a loss, so that's good. But yeah, it's feeling good. On to week 5. What's good with you, Ray?
Thank you for the honor and allowing me to be on the show, brothers. I think it's been a long time coming, so it feels good to be here. Things are going pretty well. As I told you guys last week, if I came into this week at 2-2, which I am, it's a whole new season, right? So we're starting at 0. I happen to play the Bass Pro Shops guy over there, Austin Cranz, a fellow brother of mine. So, I'm ready to go, ready to roll.
Yes, sir. I'm happy to hear that everybody's doing well. It's a big week 5, man. It's already 4 weeks into the season, so it's really about to get real. This is where after week 4, things get decided if it becomes make or break times. Like for Zvi, we know he's 0-4, so big week for you. Just like you just said, Ray, Cranz is 1-3, so the difference between 1-4 and 2-3 is massive. So yeah, let's get right into it, guys. It's been a pleasure. Week 4 recap, Austin. How we looking? How did the week look?
Yeah, I mean, let's just start off with the big downtrending news for our own Miami Dolphins. Tua concussed, really scary, really sad. I was honestly about to cry for the kid. He can't catch a break, but it seems like he's gonna be all right. He's gonna be out for the season. They're holding him out this week for probably optics reasons and whatnot. But I mean, the league media exploded with it. We know Tua, they love to play all the news on Tua. So, and then, we saw some really good games, some crazy games last week. I mean, that crazy Seahawks Lions game was 48-45. I know Dan was literally it's the curse. Every time they play, there's always a player that explodes and makes him take an L in his fantasy matchup. So we saw Rashad Penny, who you mentioned last week, go crazy. Obviously, the TJ Hawkinson explosion game, absolute mental career game for him. And then that early morning Sunday game, we finally saw J. Jeff come back into form. He had over 100 yards. I think it was 140 or something with the rushing touchdown near the end of the game. And over the pond, it's always a weird game, but it seemed like he was back to his normal self. And then a game that we were kind of expecting to be great was the Jags-Eagles game. It kind of ended up being just like a sloshy rain fest game. I mean, Trevor Lawrence fumbled the ball 4 times, so we didn't get the crazy explosion, powerhouse matchup that we thought we would get. And then the Ravens-Bills, I mean, Josh Allen took a dub from Lamar. I mean, there was a really bad call. We can get into that later, but a really bad call on 4th down from Harbaugh that kind of lost them the game. They could have taken the 3 points. They took the L there. And then some other booms. I mean, we saw Josh Jacobs go absolutely nuke against the Broncos, which was really surprising to me. Just a tough matchup, and they were in a positive game script. They finally won a game. Looked like they were clicking a little bit more. He went pop season. Packers struggled against the 3rd string quarterback and Bailey Zappi, however you pronounce it, on the Patriots, which is wild. Had to take a dub on a field goal in overtime, which is just nuts. And as we know, the Chiefs, they're absolutely insane, led by Patrick Mahomes, a true god in human form. Yeah, I mean, last week was crazy across the board.
And Mr. Ray-Bans, what are your impressions on week 4 besides your Colts taking an L to the Titans?
Well, I'll be honest, boys. You guys have been having quite a lot of fun watching those boys over here in Miami. Me, not so much watching my boys over in Indianapolis. It's not really been a fun season. I mean, quite frankly, not only is our team bad, but we have possibly one of the biggest number 1 pick busts of all time. and my boy Jonathan Taylor, who I also have on my fantasy team. So not really feeling too good. Who knows? Maybe Naheem Hines can do something. But I mean, overall, really happy, right, with Deebo Samuel. How things are coming around. I mean, shout out to Trey Lance, but with Jimmy Garoppolo coming back, I think a lot of people thought that Deebo Samuel actually got an upgrade, which kind of looks like that. Hopefully, he can get a little bit better. His touchdown run, all amazed. I mean, what can I say?
Yes, sir. Debo is known as Mr. Yak Boy. Yards after catch. Him and A.J. Brown, that's their specialty. For me, week 4, my biggest impressions were, Cranz, you hit it right on the head. That Seahawks-Lions game. Last year, when I played Daniel in the championship, I had Amon Ra and Rashad Penny, and they played in that championship versus each other. And it was an absolutely nuclear game. Everybody was going off, tons of fantasy points all around. And then same thing this year. It was just an explosion. What did they both have, like 45 points a team? It was just insane. And then I just wanted to give a big fuck you to the Harbaugh coach in Baltimore, because he's lost me a lot of money with his coaching play style. And he did it once again. I do not understand how you do not kick a field goal in the end of the fourth quarter with like less than 2 minutes left to take the lead and then just pray your defense can stop Josh Allen. It's absolutely ridiculous. So another hectic week in the NFL. And with that being said, I think with all that hecticness, I think it's a perfect transition into the injury report. So I'm going to start with that and take that away. With the quarterbacks, obviously, as Cranz just brushed up on, Tua Tungi, man, he had a really tough injury. Huge controversy in the league with, oh my God, all the Twitter doctors. Mr. Ray-Bans is a doctor. We got Shevil being a doctor. We got so many MDs now. But yeah, Tua, he suffered a really bad concussion. We already know he's out this week. In my opinion, the only reason he was ruled out was for optics, because supposedly, like, all the reports are saying he's around the facility. He's like participating with them, not in practice, but like he's watching tape. Like, he's a totally normal human being. So I think they just have him out for optics. I honestly think he's going to be back next week. Some people are saying he's out 4 weeks. Some people are saying he should retire. I think it's just the Dolphins hate wagon, man. I know Ray's going to think that we're just looking for attention there. But so Tua is out this week versus the Jets. So if you have him in your lineups, make sure you have him out. Broncos country, let's ride. Mr. Russ, he suffered a shoulder injury, but he was a limited participant in practice projected yesterday, and he said he's going to be good to go tonight. So that's good news for the Denver Broncos offense. Daniel Jones, he had an ankle injury. However, he was a limited participant in practice yesterday. I'm not sure about the injury report today. I tried to find something. I couldn't really find anything. However, they didn't sign a backup quarterback this week for their game in London, so that's a really good sign. So it looks like Daniel Jones is projected to play. And then over on the Dallas side of things, Dak Prescott, he's been dealing with that thumb injury that he had surgery on. He's not practicing this week. They're estimating about 1 to 2 weeks left, maybe. Jerry Jones said in an interview, because Jerry Jones likes to drop random bombs when he's just the owner of his team, but they said that he couldn't really grip the football fully yet. So obviously that means he's probably a no-go this week. So Cooper Rush is still going to be back there. And he, as it's looking so far, he's a really reliable backup. He's, 4-0 in his career start so far. So that's really good. And then Mr. Thomason Brady, the GOAT himself, he got pretty banged up versus that ass whooping versus the Chiefs. He's dealing with a finger injury and a shoulder injury. He was a DNP yesterday, but that's kind of just a veteran rest day. They interviewed him today, and he said he's for sure going to be out on the field. So that's really good news for Tampa Bay. And then we just got word now that Brian Hoyer was placed on the IR. So Bailey Zapp, the rookie quarterback, I like to say Zappy because it has a little bit of pizzazz to it. So Bailey Zapp is going to be the starting quarterback, we think, this week. The Mac Jones ankle injury is kind of weird still. They're saying that if he doesn't play this week, he might be back next week. So we'll keep an eye out for that. And that's really everything on the quarterback side of things. And then transitioning to the running backs, JT, as Ray just said, potentially the biggest bust, the 101 pick in a couple of years. However, I know that I saw a tweet, and Ray sent it in our fantasy chat, that the last 4 weeks last year, Jonathan Taylor started off really slow as well because they had a quarterback transition and stuff. So maybe it's just a little blip. However, Matt Ryan is the worst quarterback that they've had of the three with these new quarterbacks, in my opinion. So It's going to be tough. He's dealing with an ankle injury as well as some turf toe. They're not really giving us too much insight into the turf toe. He's kind of downplaying it, saying it's not too severe. However, it is a Thursday night game, so he will be out tonight. So if you have Jonathan Taylor in your lineup, make sure he is out of there because he is a no-go tonight. And then a heartbreaking injury. I know all of us here, it's just really, really sad news, especially for Cranz. That's his guy, Mr. Javonte Williams. He got hurt on the first snap in the second half last week. He looked like he was on pace for almost like a 75% snap share. Melvin Gordon fumbled the ball, and it's just really unfortunate. He's out with a torn ACL and LCL, so he's out for the season. If you have him in keeper and dynasty, make sure you move him to those IR spots. Just really unfortunate injury, man. We love the guy. He was supposed to have a breakout season, so that really sucks. So those are two primetime running backs in the Thursday night slate, JT and Javonte, who are both not going to be in tonight. So automatically, this game isn't going to be as explosive as we wanted it to be, which really sucks. And then moving over to Alvin Kamara, he's been dealing with that rib injury. He was a surprise no play last week in that London game. So I know for people, if you're out on the town on a Saturday night, you're waking up early like Mr. Ray. I know he was hungover on Saturday, and he left Kamara in his lineup.
Don't be me, guys. Everybody out there, do not be me, okay? Yep. You will be very upset with yourself.
I know many people got surprised by that no play. But he's back this week. Supposedly, Ian Rappaport, he had a little segment today, and they said that he should be back to his regular self. He was a limited participant in practice yesterday, and he was a limited participant today, so that's a really good sign. So for all you AK-41 owners out there, you should be happy. And then another injury, Cordero Patterson of the Atlanta Falcons. He was dealing with a knee injury last week, and they gave him a little bit of rest. And obviously, he re-aggravated that this past week in his game. So they moved him to the IR, so he will be out for a minimum of 4 weeks. And that's the risk that these teams take. When you play a player who has a little bit of knee injury and stuff like that, you're going to take that risk, and boom, exactly what happened there. He's out, and now he's got to pay the consequences. The Falcons are going to have to pay the consequences on that. So Cordero Patterson onto the IR. And then from that little bleak, sad news that I just went off of, Brian Robinson. Obviously, we know that he was in a tragic accident in a carjacking. He got shot up. However, he was designated to practice this upcoming week, which is really good. And then I just saw a tweet from Adam Schefter that said during practice today, he broke off like a huge run for like 35 yards. And then his coach Rivera came over to him and gave him like a fist bump and stuff. So that's really good news. So Brian Robinson, awesome to see him back. I've got a feeling that in a couple of weeks, he's going to be the lead cow in that backfield. I think he's going to gain over Antonio Gibson, just like what happened in preseason during camp. So that's some really good news. Breece Hall for the New York Jets. He was dealing with a knee injury. He popped up on the report. It's considered minor, nothing too crazy. I haven't been able to find the Jets injury report for today, but he was a limited participant yesterday, so nothing too crazy there. And then DeAndre Swift, we've gone over him for the past 2 weeks. He's been dealing with that shoulder injury. We projected last week, as many other people did, he's not going to play until the bye week is over. Their bye week is next week. So he's a DNP yesterday and today, so he's probably going to be out. And then Rashad Penny, he had a shoulder injury that popped up. He was a DNP yesterday. However, in his interview yesterday after practice, he didn't even bring it up, like he didn't mention it. So people are projecting that it's nothing too major. So he's probably going to play this week. Just keep an eye out for that when Seattle's injury report drops. And then David Montgomery, some surprising news. As we know, he sat out last week. Khalil Herbert was able to substitute in for him. He was a DNP yesterday, and then he was upgraded today to a limited participant in practice. So that's really good for Chicago Bears owners. Not good if you have Khalil Herbert shares and you're expecting one more week of him being that main guy there. So they could still rule him out. We never know. They might just be warming him up. Maybe he gets the out designation this week. So that would be some good news for Herbert owners. But yeah, David Montgomery was a limited participant today. So that's some pretty good news for Chicago Bears fans. And then transitioning over to the wide receivers, I've got a long list here. Starting off with Keenan Allen. Obviously, last week, he re-aggravated that hamstring injury. They were really sketchy about it. They weren't giving us too much news on it. But then once they ruled him out, we figured that it was a re-aggravation and it wasn't just like precautionary. So that really sucks. He was a DNP yesterday. Obviously, since they're on the West Coast side of things, we don't have an injury report yet. They tend to drop around 5-ish. So Keenan Allen, He's probably, I'm assuming he's not going to play this week. We'll see what happens, though, just because that hamstring is really tricky. And then going over to Detroit, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Obviously, he didn't play last week with the ankle injury. And then today he was a DNP. And then yesterday he was a DNP as well. And with the upcoming bye week and with ankle injuries being pretty tricky and being a sensitive area, as we saw with Gabe Davis, how he re-aggravated things and the decline in play was really significant. I project that they're going to sit Amon-Ra again this week. So we'll just see. Keep an eye out. Friday's injury report should be very telling for that. T. Higgins, he was dealing with a knee injury. I know he popped up on their injury report, but I don't think it was anything too major because he had a really good game last week. So just make sure you look out for that one. And then Michael Thomas, he's been dealing with a toe injury. Obviously, he didn't play last week in London, and then he was a DNP yesterday and a DNP today, so that's not really good. A lot of Twitter doctors, like actual legit doctors like Jesse Morse and stuff, they're projecting that it's like a pretty decent case of turf toe, which is not good. Wide receivers, that's like one of the worst injuries they can get besides like significant knee injuries because their cutting ability, they're stopping on a dime, their route running, it all gets severely dropped and stuff like that. So I don't project him to play this week, which is really unfortunate. So Olave stocks, Jarvis Landry, all that stuff is probably going to go up this week. And then Rashad Bateman, he's dealing with a foot injury that he had in that Bills game. He was a DNP yesterday and a DNP today. He's been downplaying it in his interviews. He said it's nothing too serious and he expects to be out there. However, I lean on the side of things that he's not going to play. So we'll see how that pans out. And then another injury, which sucks, Treylon Burks. He's dealing with turf toe as well. The past 2 weeks, we've been like, is this the week Treylon breaks out? Is this the week? Is this the week? And then he gets hurt now, which really, really sucks. So he's dealing with turf toe. They're probable to put him on IR. They haven't put him there yet, so maybe that's a good sign. But they're estimating about 3 to 4 weeks for that. So Treylon Burks, that really sucks. Jahan Dotson, the rookie stud, he has 3 touchdowns in 4 weeks. He's dealing with a hamstring injury that he aggravated, and they're already estimating him out for 1 to 2 weeks. So he will not be playing in fantasy for the next 2 weeks. And then this is one that's not super major for fantasy yet, but Isaiah McKenzie, he was dealing with a concussion and he was a DNP yesterday. However, he was back in practice in a non-contact jersey today. So that's really good. And transitioning from Isaiah McKenzie, the reason I bring him up is because Jamison Crowder, he broke his ankle last week and he was the clear-cut wide receiver 3 there in Buffalo. And when you have such a high-octane offense like you do in Buffalo, a wide receiver 3 there can play dividends sometimes if you're in a deeper league, if you're in a wide receiver 3 league. So Jamison Crowder, he's on the IR, out indefinitely. And then Isaiah McKenzie was back in practice today in a non-contact jersey. So that's a good sign. Obviously, Gabe Davis is dealing with that ankle injury. However, I've seen some clips of it and he looks really healthy now. So maybe he's overcome that little speed bump. And then transitioning over from the Bills, we've got Kenny Golladay, not really fantasy relevant, but he was dealing with a knee injury. He's likely out this Sunday in London. Hollywood Brown, he popped up on the injury report last week with a foot injury, but he had a really good game. So he was a DNP yesterday, but then he was a full practice today, so nothing to worry about there. Hunter Renfrow, we know he was out last week with a concussion, and he was a limited participant in practice yesterday. I don't have a report on him yet, so that's really good news for the Raiders. He's a huge boost for their offense. He's a cheat code at the slot, honestly. So that's really good news for them. And then Jalen Waddle, he's been dealing with this groin injury throughout the season, honestly, since preseason. He was a DNP yesterday, but he was a limited participant today, so I expect him to play. And then the Tampa Bay Bucs receivers, we know that they're kind of banged up. Chris Godwin and Julio Jones are both dealing with certain knee injuries. Godwin's injury is new. Before he was dealing with a hamstring injury, now he's dealing with a knee injury. However, he was a limited participant yesterday and today, and then Julio was a limited participant yesterday and today. So that's really good news for the Bucs. They should be at full go there. And then the last one, Tyreek Hill, he's supposedly dealing with a quad. This is the first day it's popped up on the report, but he was a limited participant today. So that's really it on the wide receiver side of things. It was a mouthful, man. It's a big list. And then tight ends, nothing too crazy here. TJ Hawkinson, he was dealing with a hip injury last week. Obviously, that didn't stop him from having that absolutely nuclear game that he had. It looked like he was the only receiver out there at points. He had 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards. So he was a limited participant in practice. today, which is a really good sign. He should be all engines a go. And then David Njoku, he's become kind of fantasy relevant the last 2 weeks. He was a DNP yesterday for veteran rest, so nothing too crazy there. They listed it as a knee, so we'll see about that. And then Kyle Pitts, this is a big one, obviously. He's been one of the significant busts of the year so far. He's been dealing with a hamstring injury, and he was a DNP yesterday, and he was a DNP today, which is very bad news. Like we just said, we've noticed it with the Keenan Allen, Jahan Dotson. These hamstring injuries, they're super tricky, and you'd rather just have these players sit out and not re-aggravate it, because the long-term consequences can be really bad. As we see with Keenan Allen, he's out almost 3 weeks now from that re-aggravation when you rush things back. So yeah, Kyle Pitts, that's a huge one at the tight end spot. And I believe that's everything. Kicker-wise, Harrison Butker should be back this week. And then I just got a notification that Jake Elliott is out this week dealing with an ankle injury. So that's really about it. Let me know if I missed anything or if there's anything that you guys can think of about anything like that.
You can't forget about the horrible injury. DK Metcalf being carted off to take a shit.
Yep.
Can't forget about that one. Luckily, he came back into the game.
Yeah, I forgot who dropped it in the chat that evening. When they dropped it, I'm not even a DK Metcalf owner anywhere, but they dropped it in the chat and they said DK is being carted off. I think it was you, Cranz, and I almost dropped my phone. I was like, no way. Rosie comes in. Oh no, I think he needs to go to use the bathroom. I'm like, oh, he got the shitters. Okay, it's all good.
Yeah, man. So the injuries, like we've been saying, Cranz, the past couple of weeks are just getting worse and worse. And that's what happens when you play a sport like football, man. It ruins your body. And the running back list is only growing, which really sucks because we've been in a year in fantasy where the running back position has not been good to people who went RB heavy in the first couple of rounds. Honestly, everybody was making fun of the RB0 and the RB hero guys in the beginning of the season, people who use that strategy to draft. However, like we've said over and over again these past couple of weeks, it's paying off to have not really invested too much stock into those running backs, because as we see Javonte Williams out for the season, Jonathan Taylor, #1 pick consensus, out tonight. Alvin Kamara has been a bust. So it's just crazy to see all of these injuries stacking up. Every week before Sunday, I've been putting in the chat, I pray for no injuries, because it just sucks, man. We really hate to see it, and we want to see a good product in each game, so it really sucks. Hopefully this upcoming week, it's not as bad.
I mean, we're starting to see the effects of a 17-week season come in a little bit earlier than I thought we would. We're only week 5, but man, it just seems like everybody's dealing with a little quad injury, a little groin injury. We got some significant knee injuries. Maybe somebody has a broken finger, maybe some, rib injuries. It's like these guys are 100% of the time playing with an injury, whether it's limiting them or not.
Yeah, for sure. So that about does it for the injury report. With that being said, Ray, I'm going to throw it over to you. So after the injury report, before we get into the Schwep Universe, usually we like to do like a recap of week 4. So if you want, you can go over just the results, not a deep dive into it, but you can say who played who this week and what the matchups were and any upsets or any late comebacks, anything like that. So the floor is yours, my friend.
So in week 4, couple of close games. One game that kind of ended up being pretty good, I guess, towards the end, where my guy, Brandon Cooks, as you guys know, actually got his first touchdown of the season. The Chargers versus the Texans. I don't want to say one of the surprise plays, but one of the yes, finally plays of the week were Austin Eckler, a.k.a. HV. So he came in, had a vintage game, one of those guys you don't necessarily need a whole bunch of rushing yards. You just really need those catches. And of course, he just has a smell. He has something for the red zone. It kind of gets him off, I guess, or something like that. Besides that, really surprised at how good of a fight, I guess, the Jaguars put up at first. And I think I was even more surprised at how Jalen Hurts and the Eagles were able to come back. As Cranz like to describe that game all weekend, a slosh fest, right? It was rainy, it was mucky, it was nasty. But Jalen Hurts and those boys, Jalen Hurts didn't even have the greatest fantasy game, but you know who did was a big preseason guy for everybody in this chat right now, which is Miles Sanders. For some reason, he's found himself. I mean, he's always been uber efficient, but it seems he's actually being able to get through these games with a high volume of touches. And honestly, I think I might be putting in a little bit of a trade bid for him. Besides that, one of my biggest surprises, I think, and this is moving forward, especially with Zach Wilson just coming back and that team just still kind of trying to find it itself, was Austin Cranz, your guy, Breece Hall. Probably, I would say, fantasy right now, not my MVP, but one of my fantasy darlings right now. I think I got to end up with him on at least half, if not more, of my teams by the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, the Jets are. It's just crazy how the Jets, with we say a quarterback away, and they're still kind of trying to find out if Zach Wilson is that guy. But like their offense is nasty. They got Breece Hall with Michael Carter, who's also nasty, with Garrett Wilson, who's nasty, with Elijah Moore, who's also nasty, and now Tyler Conklin is popping out in a little breakout. Like, I mean, if Zach Wilson can get it going, like I would hate for them to be great because they're in our division. But man, they could be nasty for sure.
For sure. And with that being said, I guess I'll throw it over to you then, Cranz. If you want to give a quick recap from the NFL universe, transitioning over to the Schwep universe, if you want to give a quick recap of week 4 and how everybody did.
All right. So I'll just start with I gave a preview of it in the intro, but I took my first dub versus Seidenberg. I kind of popped off. Let's say, I mean, I've been scoring 130 plus, but I scored 140. He had some duds, Jamar Chase and Mixon didn't really pop out as much as I'm sure he would have liked them to. So I took my dub there, 142 to 119. I'm 1-3 now. He's 2-2. And then we saw Mr. Ray take a W, his second W of the year against the now 0-4 Kings V. He got absolutely obliterated over 165. Massive chatter. Just completely destroyed, 168 to 114. So now 2-2 Ray and 0-4 Z, like I said. And then we had the game that I was hoping for, which was Mr. Kyle versus Shevil. Kyle ended up having another explosion, 168 as well. Third most points on the week with 168, right behind Ray. But he beat the undefeated Shevil to go 2-2 and send Shevil to 3-1. And then we have your game, Rosie, where you popped off highest score of the year so far, 192. I know we were saying at the beginning of the week, like your wide receivers, if you go crazy, like it would be just wild because your wide receiver looked like Thanos snapped his fingers and they all disappeared. But you beat Dan, who also popped off with 150, but you just went too crazy, sending you to 3-1 and Dan to 2-2. And the final matchup was Vega versus Max Brown. Both of them underperformed. We were hoping Max Brown could take down the undefeated, but Vega ended up pulling out a dub with super duper Cooper Cup, posting 127 to Max's 105, putting him at 4-0 and Max down to 1-3. So it was an interesting week. There was a lot of shift in the standings. And I'm happy to see that. I know Ray was saying that we need a rebalancing as well. Like we're starting to see the undefeated teams take an L and some of the lower teams take some dubs. So hopefully moving forward, that continues to be the case and we have a competitive year moving forward.
Yeah, no doubt. It's always the worst when the team who's 3-0, like Vega, doesn't have a crazy week. You only drop 127 points, except Max loses Javonte Williams for an entire half of football. Allen Robinson is either the worst receiver to ever exist or Stafford just hates him. And Drake London only having 3 points. Just a weird week, man. James Robinson only had 2, man. It's just Vega really lucked out there. And then on my side of things, it was crazy that I was the highest scoring team when I had a receiver like Joshua Palmer in my lineup and Josh Reynolds. So that just let that be a lesson to everybody. Don't be afraid, man. Fantasy football is all about opportunity and volume. And if there's banged up receivers or running backs, do not hesitate to substitute a guy like a DJ Moore who's been busting throughout the season, or Rashad Bateman who hasn't been as consistent. don't be afraid to pull that trigger and put those guys in your lineups. I know you, Cranz, we were talking about that Kyle Pitts debate. Should we start a Higbee or Gerald Everett over him? Every week so far, that's paid off. So, like I said, don't be afraid to make those substitutions. And that's a week 4 recap. Ray, any opinions on the week 4 Schwep Universe? How do you think everything played out?
Something actually, or someone I should say, actually popped into my mind. Pretty cool player. Not someone I wouldn't say is 100% proven. I think Josh Reynolds, you just mentioned, you had actually slotted into your lineup. I mean, last week, 7 receptions, 81 yards, and 1 touchdown. And I mean, look, coming into the season, the Lions are the Lions, right? We know their history, we know what they're about. But watching Hard Knocks and this and that, they fight every single play. Their offense somehow looks explosive, like quite frankly, one of the best in the league. So it looks like if you have any piece of someone who matters on that team, similar to I want to say how you look at the Bills, they're like a thrift store Bills, to where if you have someone like an Amon St. Ra, hopefully he comes back soon. TJ Hawkinson, for now, at least we know he's a little inconsistent. Just in general, even Jared Goff is looking like a king. He's a top 5, top 7 quarterback at least. So they're really a big fantasy surprise. One of the biggest surprises actually comes about 15, 20 miles from where I'm currently located in Miramar, Florida. Geno Smith. Right, they tried to write him off, right, but he didn't write back. So I guess that electric speech he had wasn't just for the end of that game. It's kind of carried on last week. I mean, I'm taking a look at here: 320 yards, 2 passing touchdowns on the ground, 7 rushes, 49 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, it's looking like, I'm not going to say the Seahawks as a football team are great, but again, nowadays football is so fast that if you have a lot of talent here, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Rashad Penny's going absolutely ham this year, something's going to work out. So really, kind of piggybacking on what Rosie said, really looking for opportunity and just touches and just places where you can get even just 1 catch here is better than nothing there. You know what I mean? Because players like Chase Claypool, who is that guy now, right? And I know that's someone that Cranz actually brought me back here. I was like, whoa, that's another team of Steelers who have a lot of talent, but what are they actually going to do? You know, look at the Lions now. They're doing something.
Yeah. So
just a lot of surprises up to this point this year. Another decent surprise before I go ahead and segue to you guys. The Packers. Packers did struggle, but I don't want to beat them up too much because you guys know I'm a big proponent of a system when it comes to football. Devontae Adams is gone. Alan Lazard just came back a couple weeks ago, I should say. He's starting to figure it out, right? Romeo Doubs is starting to pan out to be the starlet that he's supposed to be. And they have this weird type of, I've been paying attention a lot to it. They have this weird dual RB system where Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon will be on opposite sides. They'll send one of them on a route, and maybe they'll just do, you feel me? They'll just hand it off down the middle. So that's pretty interesting. But overall, I mean, even teams like the Ravens and the Bills, low scoring the past 2 weeks. Yeah, you're still going to get your production out of dudes like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. But, I mean, in general, I think this is the one year where you have to take it week by week. As the year goes by, I think this is going to be one of the biggest years when it comes to waivers. It's only week 4, about to be week 5. But, yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty exciting season.
Yeah, waivers. Go ahead, Cranz.
So I was just going to say, like, it's weird that I would be doing this and I would have never thought, but like, it seems like you're moving up the Lions into elite territory in terms of their offense. So you're playing anybody who is on the Lions and you're playing anybody who's against the Lions, right? And it's just like the things that we thought in the preseason are just not coming to fruition. Like we thought Broncos were going to be crazy and Seahawks were going to be dirt, but it turns out the Seahawks are just like a better football team than the Broncos overall, where if they had a QB, which is wild to say, like they would be popping off, and considering they just got rid of their franchise quarterback. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. What was I about to say? I was about to mention exactly that. It's really weird how Russ goes to Denver and Seahawks looked anemic last year with him really under center. And now we see DK Metcalf, he's finally popping off, giving us wide receiver 1 numbers back-to-back weeks. Tyler Lockett's giving you solid wide receiver 2 numbers back-to-back weeks. Yeah. So it's really interesting to see that. And then we have the Broncos they look anemic, dude. They're like not good on offense at all. And they've already had 4 primetime games, dude. This is absolutely absurd. Get them the hell off my TV. I got to watch them tonight. Honestly, I'm rooting for the Colts in this one because I'm not trying to see Russ cook. Shout out to Ray there. And then the last thing I was going to say, Josh Reynolds, correct me if I'm wrong, but was he not on the Rams with Goff when they were on the team together? So that's why they have that chemistry. So if Amon-Ra is out this week again, that's like another piece of why I started him last week, because I was reading shit like they already have that rapport. Obviously, that comfortability, that route running, as we see with like Marquise Hollywood Brown and Kyler and stuff, that all those little things really matter. So yeah, crazy week. With that being said, I believe we should transition into week 5 of the Schwep Universe. This week, we're changing up the format. Instead of going over every game in the NFL slate, we're actually just going to break down matchups within the Schwep world so that we can kind of just deep dive into those players. We're in a 10-person league, so really everybody in our lineups are going to be fantasy relevant who we're talking about here. And on top of that, we're in a 3 wide receiver league. So some of those flex players, if you're just in a 2 wide receiver league or somebody, are probably in our lineups. Our free agency is thin. Our waiver wire is super thin. So most of the players that we're going to be talking about here are going to be fantasy relevant, kind of like the NFL slate. And that just gives us some more time to really break down some other segments that we're interested in doing, like gambling, the waiver wire, our mentas of the week, all that type of stuff. There's so much stuff that is involved in fantasy football that we want to talk about. And when you talk about just all of the games, it really just consumes all the time. And our schedules don't really link up right now to have multiple episodes a week to break everything down. So we're going to switch it up this week. Hopefully the audience likes it. Hopefully it feels better for us and the transition works out. And with that being said, I'll throw the first matchup over to you, Cranz.
All right, so get your phones out, boys. Pull up these matchups. It's time to get it popping. The first one I'll go over is a game which is Shevil versus Seidenberg. And there's a lot of noticeable cues for Seidenberg's team. He's been having a rough year in terms of injuries and player performance and things of that nature, but I mean, Rashad Bateman, Kyle Pitts, both with the questionable tags. He's got D-Mont on the bench. It's just tough for him with the injuries. There is one thing that's really, really playing into his favor, which is that Cincinnati versus Baltimore game. I personally think that game is going to go crazy. I believe the over-under is only set at 48, but I think we're going to see some fireworks in that game. And of course, he has Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase. I believe he has. Oh no, Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon, but he is playing against Mark Andrews on the other side of that ball. So that Sunday night matchup is going to be pretty crazy. But the one thing for Sevilla is that the meat and potatoes, the chunky part of Sevilla's lineup in Dameon Pierce, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, even Juju, they all have such great matchups. I mean, I was saying last week I was excited for the Jets passing attack against Pittsburgh. Obviously, Zach Wilson coming in, you can't really say anything. But Stephon Diggs versus Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has been absolutely putrid in the secondary without JJ Watt. Or TJ Watt, I'm sorry. JJ Watt, his brother, TJ Watt. And so I think Diggs has the potential to go absolutely nuclear this week. Devontae Adams in what is likely to be a positive game script versus Kansas City. They're going to be chucking the ball. Kansas City is very susceptible in the pass game. He's going to have his for sure. Dameon Pierce came onto the scene last week and said, I am the guy. I am the guy. I am going to be played every week, and I'm going to be busting big-ass runs every week. And he gets a juicy-ass matchup in Jacksonville where, like Ray said, Miles Sanders just absolutely went nuclear for like 30 fantasy points on them. So I'll just break down a little bit. If I were to go head to head, I mean, Jalen Hurts just is way better in fantasy and looking like a way better quarterback than Russell Wilson. So I'm giving him the heads up there, but he also plays Arizona. He's going to have he has a better matchup there. So I take Jalen Hurts in that. Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus Zeke. I'm taking Clyde there every time. He's like the RB5 or RB4 on the year. They're using him in the red zone a ton. He's converting all of his red zone touches into touchdowns. They love using him in the passing game, and he's in a great matchup against the Raiders. So I'm taking Clyde Edwards over Zeke. Zeke has not looked solid. Tony Pollard has looked much more efficient. I mean, they use Zeke in the red zone, and he hasn't looked terrible, but it's just with Cooper Rush and the way that they're running this offense, it doesn't seem like it's playing to Zeke's game. And so he's going to get his touches and have 60, 70 yards, all purpose in a game, but he's not going to be putting up fantasy numbers for you like the Zeke of old. Dameon Pierce versus Joe Mixon. I honestly am giving the dub to Dameon Pierce here just because that I think in this matchup, we're going to see the passing attack go crazy in this Baltimore versus Cincy game more than the opportunity on the ground. Joe Mixon is going to have points. He's going to get he's obviously used in the passing game, but I think we're going to see a lot of success from Jamar Chase, T. Higgins through the air, Joe Burrow throwing the ball to keep up with Lamar. So I think Dameon Pierce has the potential ability to outscore Joe Mixon this week. I have them really close. I would say like equal or like greater than or equal to for Dameon Pierce. It's very close, but I'm giving Dameon Pierce the slight edge just because of the matchup, and he's been seeing all of the running back carries on the ground. Devontae Adams and Jamar Chase this week are neck and neck for me. I think they're going to put up similar numbers. I personally would slightly give Jamar Chase the lead just because of the matchup and where I think they're going to go. But Devontae Adams is going to score just as many points as him. So I kind of put them down as a wash, an equal matchup there. Stephon Diggs is blowing Rashad Bateman out of the water, though. Like Stephon Diggs is going to put up, we could see another vintage 40-point popper from Stephon Diggs against that Pittsburgh lineup. And he has Rashad Bateman in who, Rosie and I think he's not even going to play this week. So if he has to end up playing like somebody from his bench, like a Marquez Valdez-Scantling or Chase Claypool, like the gap widens even more, which is crazy there. So Juju versus Michael Pittman. Typically, I would be in the boat that I would put Michael Pittman above Juju, but with the matchup with Denver and stuff, I kind of have them more on level ground. Pittman and the Colts passing offense have been struggling a little bit since Pittman's good game in week 1. And of course the quad injury and things of that nature. So I kind of leave them even just because Juju hasn't been popping like I thought he was going to, but the matchup, it kind of boosts him. So I leave them on level ground. Mark Andrews is a stud every week, especially if we see Rashad Bateman go out. He's going to blow Kyle Pitts out of the water. If Kyle Pitts even plays, he's been a DMP for the past 2 days. So maybe we'll see Side have to pick somebody random up off the waivers, and there's not much out there for him right now. Maybe some slot in guys like Conklin or something like that, maybe on the waivers, but I'm giving Pitts the edge there. And then at the flex, I personally am taking Tyler Lockett just because we don't really know about Rashad Penny. But if Rashad Penny goes, he's obviously the guy that I think has the higher upside compared to Lockett. They both have good high upsides, but I think just the volume on the ground is really, really great for Rashad Penny. But Tyler Lockett has been showing out lately, so I'm giving Tyler Lockett the edge there. There's not really a great backup on Sevilla's side. Jeff Wilson, Devontae Smith, they're both great players, but their matchups are tough. I would say if he slots Devontae Smith in or Jeff Wilson in, it might be more even just because those guys are going to see a ton of volume. And, of course, Jeff Wilson has seen like 18-plus carries on the ground. He's getting the work. Just the matchups are tough. Carolina, they don't seem like a tough matchup, but their defense has been significantly more solid than their offense this year overall. So overall, I am going to have to say that Sevilla is going to take the dub and go to 4-1, which pains me to say. I hate that the league isn't going to be balanced. I know it's tough for Seidenberg, another tough matchup for him. But yeah, I mean, we'll see how this one turns out. What do you guys think?
The battle of the Ethans, right? Two Mentas, I would say. I think I'm actually going to go ahead and go with Seidenberg, reason being really good breakdown on those matchups, by the way, Austin. Number one, Jalen Hurts. I mean, Jalen Hurts versus Russell in today's world, it's kind of like Jalen Hurts is the old Russell White with this explosive offense. They just look sick. And as we all know, we're big proponents. I think the Cardinals are one of those teams where it's like, if my team or my player is playing against the Cardinals, we're circling that because they're probably going to have a big week. At least that's how I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
Next, we have Clyde, one of my big preseason guys. I know we had the issues preseason last year. This year, he swore that was because of those issues he was having, and it's looking to be true. I mean, he's in full point PPR. I think he's RB 5 or 6, so he's looking sick this year. I think that's going to continue against the Raiders. Next, of course, I mean, Ezekiel Elliott. You guys know I love him. One of my favorite players ever. at any position. But I mean, they play the Rams. No matter how downgraded the Rams may look on defense, they're still stingy, especially against running backs, right? It's really hard to run against them with that line. Damian Pierce, right, for Sevilla, he definitely shut me up with that pick because he kind of went the zero running back route. That's working out for him. But him going against Joe Mixon, I actually saw something today. Joe Mixon, I believe, is top 3 in the NFL in targets for running backs. And so last week, Damian Pierce did have 6 catches, only 8 yards, but look, 6 catches is 6 catches. And I do think that this is going to be a game where the Texans are going to have to, maybe dump it off a whole bunch of times because I think the Bengals have definitely turned it around, right? And then of course with Damian Pierce against the Jags, I think the Jags are definitely in a position where they're upset. They're going to want to put up a lot of points, this and that, whatnot. They're going to be at home. A whole bunch of their offensive players busted, so they're going to put up a lot of points. It's going to force Damian Pierce to get a lot of targets, but I think I'm going to give the slight edge to Joe Mixon there. Jamar Chase against Baltimore. Favorite player in the NFL right now. For Rosie, I know he has him in a lot of other leagues, another big fan. I think he's going to break out this week. He's going to have a similar week to what he had in week 1. Versus Devontae Adams. I mean, I can't talk down on a legend, probably the pound-for-pound best wide receiver in the NFL besides maybe a Cooper Kupp. I'm going to say it's even there, quite frankly. Maybe a slight edge to Devontae just because against KC, I mean, it's KC. Right, they're gonna put up a whole bunch of points. Period. Of course, Stephon Diggs, another one of my favorite players. Right, Mr. Saucy. He's definitely gonna go ahead and go ham against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'm definitely gonna give him the edge over Rashad Bateman. That's a no-brainer. Juju versus my guy, my personal guy, Michael Pittman. Now, based on matchup, Juju's got it. Based on, I want to say situation, prime time. Boys needing to come out and have a huge game. I mean, look, we don't have that many options besides Michael Pittman as it is. The Chiefs have 1,000,001, right? So I think I'm going to give the slight edge to Michael Pittman there. Kyle Pitts versus Mike Andrews. I mean, Kyle Pitts might not even play Mark Andrews if he's not going up against Travis Kelce. I'm picking him every single fucking time, right?
Yeah.
Of course, we have Rashad Penny. Hopefully, I think he's going to be good to play this Sunday. You guys said, right?
Yeah, he should. Yeah. He should be good. It's nothing crazy.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because I know it was just Wednesday, but he didn't practice yesterday. The only thing with him is that he does play the Saints, which, as long as we've been watching football, they are just hard to run against. It's like it's a big fucking brick wall right there. It's just hard to do. And then, of course, Tyler Lockett, I think he's going to have a good game against the Saints. Saints defense, again, is pretty stingy, less so that for the pass than against the run. And then, of course, with kickers, I mean, Jacksonville's kicker, not too sure about how he's going to do against Houston, right? I mean, it might be a little bit mucky outside. Young Hoku can be a stud sometimes, can be a stud sometimes, but they do play the Bucs, so they're going to have to put up points. And then last but not least, I mean, 49ers against Panthers, they're going to score probably at least 12, 14 points at least. Baker's terrible at the quarterback position. And then the Dolphins, you guys do have a lot of injuries. I think Byron Jones and Xavier didn't practice today. I think you guys only have 4 healthy cornerbacks. So, I mean, you guys play the Jets. It's in New York, but you guys also dominate the Jets no matter where it is. So I think overall, pound for pound, I'm going to have to give the edge to the smaller Ethan. So I'm going to go with Seidenberg this week.
Yeah, interesting. Excellent breakdown by you two. I don't really have to deep dive into anything there. The one thing I would say is I honestly think that Rashad Penny's not going to be a good start this week because he plays New Orleans. I think that Seville is chasing points from last week here. If I were him, I would no hesitation put Jeff Wilson in there or maybe Devonta Smith because it's a shootout game. I'd probably lean Jeff Wilson because I think Carolina is really, really bad. Not defensively, like they're pretty decent against the run and stuff, but I just think that the team is so bad on offense that I think after last Monday night game, I really think that San Fran's going to be able to move the ball. They're really starting to get that offense going with Jimmy G there. They're kind of getting rid of those growing pains a bit. So I think that Seville is chasing points there versus Penny. I would bench him this week, and I'd for sure slot in Jeff Wilson. If Seidenberg's team was really healthy, if Bateman was playing, if Pitts was playing, I think I would give him the W this week because I really like the matchups. I think the Baltimore game is going to be really good. I know he has Jamar Chase. And then I think the 49ers are an absolute monster play on defense this week. I think they're going to break like 16 points, honestly. So like I said, if Seidenberg was healthy and there wasn't question marks there, I would pick him. But since there's question marks at the tight end position and his wide receiver position. I am going to agree with Cranz here, and I'm going to side with Shevil on this one. So a recap, Cranz and I both have Shevil in this, and Ray has Seidenberg. I think that what we're going to do is we're going to reset the tracking of our picks so far, Cranz, because now Ray's going to be a permanent host on the show. So I think we'll just start from week 5. Ray, what we like to do is keep track of like our picks and see who is the most accurate and who's the most knowledgeable guy here, you know?
Like that.
So Cranz and I are on the Sevilla side and you're on the Seidenberg side. With that being said, I will break up the next matchup. And what do you know? It's you two gentlemen here playing off against each other. So this will be a fun breakdown for me. I can have some fun with this one. So Mr. Cranz no longer an Owen. Mr. 1-3 versus Ray-Bans JT Do You Love Me at 2-2. This is a really, really important matchup for both of you guys. Can solidify that playoff push. I know we're really early on in the season, but like Cranz said, the league isn't as balanced as we want it to be, and we're not predicting it to be. So it's really important middle of the pack players and bottom tier really catch those dubs when they can, especially before bye weeks pop off next week, because obviously that ruins teams, especially now that we're in a 3 wide receiver league and the depth is even more of an issue. It's really important to get dubs before bye weeks start, and this is that last week. So going over the quarterbacks, we got Kyler Murray versus Tom Brady. I actually have them ranked very close this week. I have Kyler as my QB7 and Tom Brady as my QB8. Kyler, he plays the Eagles this week with an over-under 49.5 points. The Cardinals are +6, so obviously that's a positive game script for Kyler in the passing offense. The Eagles ranked 7th versus the pass. That secondary is really good. I haven't looked up Darius Slay's injury, but he was banged up last week, so that could be an advantage for Kyler. They're only allowing 177 yards through the air, so that's really not that high, especially with Kyler kind of being as anemic as that offense has been. Fantasy-wise, he's been able to produce towards the end of games and with the rushing a little bit, but it is a tougher matchup. However, the potential for a shootout is there. So Kyler, it's going to be a little shaky. However, I think he's going to be in for a solid game just because of the potential for the shootout. And then going over to Ray's quarterback, Tom Brady, he's only the quarterback 18 so far. So people like Ray who waited on quarterback, it's still not paying off. Granted, his receivers have been really banged up and suspended, so that's played a role in why Tom Brady isn't producing crazy fantasy-wise, but he had a good week last week. So the over-under in that game set at 48, so both of these quarterback matchups are really high. However, the Bucs are -9 in this one, so they really predict that they're going to put it on the Falcons early, so maybe they score those points early on through the air, so Tom Brady benefits. But if Leonard Fournette steals a lot of those touchdowns, it could hurt Brady there. Atlanta ranks 25th versus the pass. So really, really good matchup there. And I just have a feeling in my gut that Tom Brady's going to go nuke this week. So I think it's going to be he's got a solid floor with high upside. If I'm going to give the advantage there, it sounds kind of contradictory because I have Kyler ranked 1 spot above Brady. But somewhere in my gut, I got to just give this advantage to Ray at the quarterback position because I just think that Tom Brady is going to really do some big things this week. So that's quarterbacks. Going over the running back side of things, we got Ramondre Stevenson and Josh Jacobs versus Aaron Jones and Kareem Hunt. Tackling Cranz side of the ball first, Ramondre Stevenson. I think he was an honorable mention for me for Menta of the Week. He plays Detroit this week. It's an absolutely disgusting matchup. They're ranking 30th versus the run right now, allowing 166 yards on the ground. He slightly outtouched Damian last week. I just think he's a PPR running back with huge upside. I have him as a running back 2 this week. With upside, I really think he's a smash spot play. The over-under there is 45.5, and the Patriots are -3. So that gives Ramondre a positive game script potentially there. And then Josh Jacobs. Welcome to the 2022 NFL season, my friend. I know Cranz before the week last week was like, I think he's going to go off. Do I start him? He didn't end up pulling the trigger, but it paid dividends. Josh Jacobs had an explosive week. Finally, they're feeding him the ball. I listened to a lot of Sirius XM fantasy radio, and they've had a lot of Las Vegas Raiders and obviously Oakland Raiders fans calling in because they're an 0-3 team and they weren't projected to be that. So a lot of fans have been calling in and they've been taking their interviews because it's good content when you have fans who are angry at their team, you know? And so many of these fans have been ripping their coach because first off, if you're not going to give Josh Jacobs his contract extension, because this is a contract extension year to him, run him into the ground. They have not been feeding him the ball like they should be. And last week they finally gave him the ball. He had a ton of touches. It's Josh Jacobs. I think he's a really good play. However, Kansas City ranks first versus the rush. They're only allowing 66 yards on the ground so far. So it's going to be a tougher matchup. However, I was doing a little digging and Kansas City is susceptible to passing running backs. So Leonard Fournette had 7 for 57 and a touchdown last week. Eckler had 9 for 55 week 2, which is solid, 9 catches. So there should be a lot of dump offs there. And Vegas is finally feeding him the ball, like I said. Yeah. Josh went for 28 for 144 and 2 TDs last week. So overall, Cranz has really, really solid matchups this week. Kansas City, like I said, not a good matchup, but if Vegas is feeding him the ball like they are, that volume alone provides Jacobs as a really good matchup. Excuse me. And then going over to Ray's side of the ball, we've got Aaron Jones and Kareem Hunt. Aaron Jones.
He's slotted in Nyheim Hines now instead of Kareem Hunt.
Okay, so I'll go over that. Interesting.
Yeah.
I had to look at it. I haven't updated it. Okay, so Aaron Jones, running back 10 so far. Giants at the Packers, over under 41. Absolute stinker. Not that exciting. Packers are -8, which in my opinion does not favor Aaron Jones. In my opinion, that favors AJ Dillon in a matchup like this because Aaron Jones is the more superstar running back, I guess you say. So if they get into like a blowout type of game, I think they're going to want to conserve him and really feed the ball to AJ Dillon. And it's a tough match. It's not a tough matchup. The Giants rank 28th versus the rush. They're allowing 141 yards on the ground. So it's a really good matchup. And Aaron Jones is just a stud. So I have him as a high-end RB1 this week. And since Ray did a pivot from last time I checked, Nyheim Hines is his running back 2 this week. Tough matchup. Denver's really, really good versus the rush. I guess Nyheim Hines is going to be the featured back there. I'm not really sure. He's kind of on that flex appeal to me this week. I don't know who else they're going to get involved there. Maybe they get Deion Jackson involved. I really doubt it. If Denver gets that offense clicking, Nyheim Hines is going to get a lot of passing work, and we're in a PPR league there. So that's decent. I had Cranz having the advantage by a lot because I think that Kareem Hunt is not really that good of a running back 2 right now because Nick Chubb is just absolutely insane right now, and he's so efficient. Nyheim Hines boosts Ray a little bit in the running back department because of the volume play, but I'm going to have to give the advantage to Cranz here on the running back side of things because Josh Jacobs is being fed the ball, and then the matchup for Ramondre is really juicy. I had him as a potential Menta of the week this week, honorable mention there. And then going over to the wide receiver side of things, we got A.J. Brown, Jalen Waddle, and J-Jeff on Cranz's side, and then we got Debo, Scary Terry, and Sutton on Ray's side of things. So A.J. Brown, they versus the Cardinals this week, over under 49.5 points, and the Cardinals are +6 here. Cards are pretty susceptible to the pass. The secondary isn't that strong. However, I was doing some more digging, and it's a sneaky tough matchup for A.J. Brown because a cornerback, Byron Murphy, shut down Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupp in back-to-back weeks. He didn't allow either receiver to have 4 receptions or 50 yards. So that's pretty interesting there. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm not sure if he's a shadow receiver or if he just plays one side of the field and A.J. Brown moves all over. But he's a wide receiver 1 in the best offense right now in fantasy with the Philadelphia Eagles. So he should be a smash spot. However, A.J. Brown owners, do not be surprised if he doesn't have a crazy game because of how well Byron Murphy is playing in the secondary there. And then Jalen Waddle, over under 44.5 versus the Jets. Jets are +3. Middle of the pack matchup for him. It's just a really tough matchup to gauge because of Teddy Bridgewater. As we saw last week, Jalen Waddle was like basically invisible on the field. All he was doing was targeting Tyreek Hill there. So I don't really know what to say. I have a feeling that Jalen Waddle will be incorporated more this week, But he's just wide receiver 2 to me there. Cranz has spoils galore there at the wide receiver position. So he's still a wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside. I'm interested to see who Sauce Gardner is going to be locking up with. I don't know if you guys have been paying too much attention to it. As Dolphins fans, I follow every Dolphins player. Him and Tyreek Hill have been chit-chatting a little bit. Sauce was talking about how he knows how to go against speedy receivers because he played against Jameson Williams and at Alabama and stuff like that. And literally Tyreek Hill has not breathed a word, but today all he did was tweet a peace sign emoji. So he's ready for that smoke. I'm excited to see the Sauce Gardner lockup this week. However, I'm going over Jalen Waddle. Maybe Sauce will play a little bit on Waddle, so we'll see. It's interesting to see young talent play young talent there. But Waddle, I've got him as a wide receiver 2 with 1 upside. And then Jeff finally had his bounce back week. Chicago's a tough matchup, though. They ranked 4th versus the pass, only allowing under 170 yards. However, I'm not really buying that stat too much because they've only played Houston, Green Bay, and San Fran so far. So those teams aren't really that prolific in the passing game. They're not crazy quarterback-wise. Like Rodgers is a quarterback, but his receivers aren't that strong in the beginning of the season when they played them. So I'm not buying that it's a tough matchup, really. Jeff, wide receiver 1, he's a walking nuclear ticking time bomb, wide receiver 1. And then going over to Ray's side of things, Deebo Samuel finally had that week we were all looking for. Right before the game in our 12-man league, I traded for him to try and really supplant my team because Allen Robinson wasn't doing what I needed him to do there, and Michael Thomas was banged up in my other league. And he finally had that huge game. I call him Mr. Yak Boy, him and Kodak, them boys right there, man. Him and A.J. Brown, when they catch that ball, they do magical things, man. They're truly just built different out there. I love watching him play. He's a great personality. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a really good game. Panthers have a solid defense, like you said, but we saw Hollywood be able to go for 6 for 88 and 1. And then Olave was able to go for 9 catches for 147 yards when they played them. So, obviously, there's potential there for a really good game. And then Scary Terry, wide receiver 41 so far, Ray. I know you're not happy with the output so far. He's had some garbage time points, but it's just not what we really thought he was going to be there. So nothing too crazy, but it's a really good matchup. Tennessee ranks very in the low percentile versus the pass. So no Jahan Dotson as well with the hamstring injury. I've seen a couple of tweets from some fantasy people saying that doesn't really affect Scary Terry this week. However, I don't buy that. I think that with Dotson out there, the volume should go up. I have him as a decent wide receiver 2 play this week. And then Cortland Sutton, them boys up to Sutton, man. He's been really good this week. It's kind of a tough matchup versus Indy, as Ray knows. But I really think that Sutton is going to pop off tonight. He was one of my honorable mentions this week. So I have him as a wide receiver 2 just because of the matchup. But he has huge wide receiver 1 upside if Russ can get it going this week. So that really matches up the receivers here. However, I got to give the advantage to Cranz here again, Ray. I apologize. When you have A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, and Jalen Waddle, it's really hard to go against that on any given week. So I got to give the advantage there to Cranz. And then going over to the tight ends, Tyler Higbee versus T.J. Hawkinson. Higbee was a steal on the waivers for Cranz. I honestly should have picked him up because Dallas Goedert's my tight end, so I'm fine with that. He's like a really solid tight end, but Higbee's volume has just been absurd. He's the security blanket here. He got 14 targets last game. It's so stupid how crazy and reliable he is for Matt Stafford and how irrelevant Allen Robinson is. So over under in that game versus the Cowboys, 43.5. Rams are -4 there. I don't really like the spread there. Dallas has looked like a decent offense so far. So that's an interesting game to pay attention for. But as of right now, Higbee's a tight end 1. And then TJ Hawkinson versus New England. We finally saw TJ Hawkinson explode. Honestly, when I was watching the game, I really wish I was like, damn, I should have considered Hawkinson as a Menta of the week because AJB was out. Amon-Ra St. Brown was out. DeAndre Swift is out, and we know he gets featured in the pass game heavy. And we saw him pop off. He had 12 targets, 8 catches, 179 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then to top it off, I was digging on New England versus the tight end. Mandrews went for 8 catches, 89 yards, and 2 touchdowns in week 3 versus New England. Tunyon scored a touchdown versus them, and Pat Fryermuth scored a touchdown versus New England in week 2. So they're clearly susceptible to the tight end there. So I'm going to give the advantage to Ray in that category. And then on the flex, we got Ceedee Lamb versus Chris Godwin. Ceedee Lamb, really bad secondary that he's going up against. I had the Rams in a huge parlay last week, and I just saw them get absolutely decimated by the secondary. So Ceedee Lamb is in a really good matchup this week. And then Chris Godwin, also really, really good matchup versus Atlanta. To me, he's a wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside there. On paper, I should give the advantage to Cranz here. But like I said, that Tom Brady, that gut feeling, I'm going to give the advantage to Ray here at the flex position. And then defense, I think I'm going to have to give the advantage to Ray on that one. I just think that the matchup is really good here. It's a super, super tough game for both sides of the ball. It was really hard for me to predict this one. I'm kind of just going on the spot with who I think is going to win this week. And I'm going to have to side with Austin Cranz because the running back and wide receiver matchup is too good.
Dang, man. I was hoping you would side with Ray. I need that voodoo magic. So, yeah, I mean, I was hoping that you would choose Ray because you chose my opponent last week, and I finally took a dub. The projections have me winning. I'm obviously going to pick myself, and we know who Ray's going to pick. I just think that my team is built around finding the ability to find running backs that can get it done and supplement my wide receiver play. And so I have the potential matchups. I don't like that Jacobs could potentially be scripted out, but he has been fed in the passing game recently. He's had 6 targets or 5 targets in both of the last 2 games, which really, really surprises me. If they keep it close at all, Josh Jacobs is going to get fed. Obviously, Ramondre Stevenson is in a great matchup. He's had the lion's share of the snap percentage. So I'm going to give myself the W this week.
For me, I mean, look, I would be an idiot to pick anyone other than myself, right? But yeah. I'll be quite honest. Everybody knows I kind of try to take my pride off sometimes, right? If you want me to go based off matchups, if this was not my game, I probably would say Austin is going to win simply because his running backs are just a lot more solid in regards to what you're going to get this week, especially with Josh Jacobs in that passing game. His wide receivers are his wide receivers. Enough said. I think really where I am falling off is really we don't know what I'm going to get from my boy Nyheim Hines tonight against the Broncos. And then also with Terry and Hawkinson just a little bit inconsistent. Look, I think it's going to be a good game. Good luck to you, my brother. At the end of the day, I don't mind if you smoke me with a couple players because I got a couple of them in other leagues. So kudos to you, boy.
Yeah, good luck.
So you're picking yourself?
Brother.
Yeah, I'm going to pick myself.
Okay. The projections are really crazy there. It should be a super close game. And then with that being said, should I throw it over to Cranz? Because Ray, I know you only have one matchup this week. No, we'll give it to Ray. Ray, you can take over the next matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So what I am covering this week is actually Hollywood cooking, right? Shout out to Dania, Mike Rosales versus Max Brown, Trump train, right? Now, really with this matchup, it's a battle of I don't want to necessarily say the top and the bottom, but it's a former champ versus someone in Max who he says he doesn't care about fantasy, but he might just be bad. So, but that's besides the point. I'll go ahead and I'll start with the quarterbacks, right? We have Josh Allen, QB2, going up against the Steelers at home. I mean, it's White Jordan. It's Josh Allen. I mean, he's him. Number 12 ranked passing per DVOA. But, of course, as Cranz said and alluded to a lot earlier, they're just a lot worse defense when they don't have TJ Watt. Just kind of shows you what type of influence that dude really has back there. And then on the other side, we have Max, who has Joe Burrow, who at QB8 definitely has turned it around. He's looking like the QB1 everybody drafted him to be. Ravens, poorest secondary, number 14 ranked passing per DVOA. So they're based on matchup, I guess it's kind of even, but again, I have to give the matchup to Josh Allen because he's Josh Allen, right? And they also play the Steelers at home. They beat the Ravens last week, but I feel like the past couple weeks their offense hasn't been what we wanted them to be. So I think this is the game where they're going to try to go out there and embarrass the Steelers, right? So definitely giving the edge to Rosie there. Next, starting with running backs, right? We'll start with Zvi, Austin Eckler. Of course, he is the RB3. And in the last game, I mean, we saw him come out and do what, again, everybody drafted him out to be.
Finally,
I know he's
bro.
had his nice right? I know he's had his little double-digit games here and there, but this was the game where we got the efficiency on the ground, we got the catches, and then we got the touchdowns. I know a lot of people in the past always say, "Hey, Austin Eckler, all those touchdowns he used to score, it was just a 1 or 2 year thing." I think we're kind of just finding out that that little guy is. I remember hearing a rumor a couple years ago. Somebody in the locker room, they were saying that he, pound for pound, quite frankly, is the strongest guy on that team. So I think just kind of like Messi, that low center of gravity, right? It's really hard to bring him down. He kind of just bounces off of people, and he's also really fast. On the other hand, for Max, we have Najee Harris, which, I mean, as a fan of football, we all love. You guys are UF fans, so I know you guys watch a lot of him playing ball as well. With Najee Harris, I mean, he's a great talent, but he plays the Bills, who are number 9 rushing DVOA, and we know they're going to put up a lot of points. Last year, I know Najee was a type of running back who got a lot of PPR catches. You know what I mean? He was doing it whether the Steelers were getting blown out or whether they were beating other teams up or if it was a close game. But this year, it just seems that the problems that they have going on with Mitch, even Kenny Pickett, who looked kind of good coming in, but he threw a couple of picks. So now that offense kind of is. If you're stacking 8-man boxes, there's some teams out there who can go ahead and get it done. The Steelers aren't necessarily one of them, especially against the Buffalo Bills. So definitely by far giving the running back one at least edge to Rosie. Going down there, we have Melvin Gordon for Rosie going up against my boys. The Indianapolis Colts tonight. I mean, look, I'm a big Melvin Gordon fan, as you guys know, even dating back to when he was on the Chargers, right, pre-Austin Eckler. And like Cranz said and Rosie said earlier as well, with opportunity and just usage, he's going to get it. But my boys, right, the Colts are actually number 2 rushing per DVOA. We're a pretty tough matchup. I know we're not good as a football team, but our defense definitely locks it up. So, again, I think he's going to get good work, but I just don't know if he's going to score a touchdown. I don't know if he's going to get, efficient numbers on the ground. He might get a couple catches. On the other hand, of course, we have one of my favorite guys in the NFL of all time, undrafted free agent James Robinson, Cranz's main op, right? Of course, he is running back 11 going up against the Houston Texans, who are number 29 per rushing DVOA. So elite level matchup. We already know that. I mean, James Robinson, I was actually looking back. I've had him on quite a couple teams the past couple years. He definitely has a knack for going ahead and doing it versus the Texans. It's going to be a tough divisional matchup. It's definitely not going to be an icky, sticky, sloshy game like last week. So I definitely think there, at least at that RB2 slot, Max has a slight edge in regards to just matchup. Melvin might get a little bit more work because, RIP my boy Javonte, hopefully he comes back healthy as ever, right? But Melvin's going to get the work. I just don't know if he's going to get a lot of room to run, especially with that offense, like Rosie said, looking so anemic, right? And then I also wanted to go ahead and get into the wide receivers, and starting with Marquise Brown. This is something, even aside before I thought I was going to hop onto the pod, I was looking at this a long time ago because I'm a big time Darius Slay fan, but I'm also from South Florida, grew up in the Hollywood area, so I'm also a big Marquise Brown fan, right? So it's a really tough matchup against the Eagles. We're expecting it to be a shootout. I think you said the over-under, Rosie, was about 49.5, something like that. So there's definitely going to be points there, and Marquise Brown is definitely one of the players, along with Kyler Murray, who is Austin's quarterback, who's kind of shut me up because I thought that without D-Hop, with all the offseason issues, with Cliff Kingsbury and everything that everybody over there in Arizona has to say about him, I just thought that things weren't going to work out, especially with Marquise Brown being 5'9". I mean, I think all three of us standing next to Marquise Brown right now would look like we could probably play football with him, right? But when he's on that field, I mean, we saw his touchdown last week. It doesn't matter who he plays. The guy's just a dog. And with Kyler, double XP boy, right? Also proving to me that even for a little guy, really just a bully and really is about that football life. Really respect those two guys. And that's going up against, I believe, DJ Moore. Or no, I think you also have DJ Moore, right, Rosie? Yeah. So for DJ Moore, another guy that I love from a football perspective, but of course he's going up against the 49ers. said, it's San Fran. Their defense has been good for how long now? They're always good. DJ Moore, we can only hope and pray that his talent kind of pans out. Cranz actually said this preseason. I kind of think, it's one of those things among a long line of things I kind of have to bite the bullet on going back is that, yo, DJ, how long are we gonna wait for it, brother? I mean, we love you, brother. Like, we know you're talented. We can kind of test it to your quarterback play, but there's a lot of dudes out there who do it regardless of the quarterback play. We got to see something. So with Brandon Cooks, another one of my guys, it's kind of looking like Rosie kind of took some of my guys this season, but we'll get into that later. Brandon Cooks, at wide receiver 37, going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's an matchup because I guess up to this point, the Jags, especially against the pass game, have been kind of stingy, which is really a big surprise to me in general. Brandon Cooks did have his first touchdown of the season last week, which was a good sign. But I think of it as kind of like just an average matchup, but again, based on it just being divisional, they play each other, 2 times every single year. I personally, as a Colts fan, watch them almost every other game as well. I think Brandon Cooks is going to be pretty decent there. Now, on the other side for Max, we have T. Higgins, one of Rosie's guys, a guy he's definitely come around on. I want to say at least definitely, I think one of his favorite players at wide receiver 14 at Baltimore. So we know this game. We've seen these guys play a couple times every single year. We know this game has a high potential to be a shootout. T. Higgins has been putting it on, folks. Last week, he had an amazing bomb touchdown against a top 3 corner in Xavier Howard. I know you guys didn't really like that, but from a football and a fantasy perspective, I mean, it looked fucking great because, I mean, we do not ever see Xavier Howard get smoked like that, right? He might miss a tip ball or something like that, but just the route running and his speed and his size, he's really looking, honestly, like he's competing with Jamar Chase in a 1A, 1B type of situation over there in Cincinnati. So it's looking great there for Max. Next, we have one of my guys. I think in the fantasy football world, everybody loves this guy, Allen Robinson. He's one of those guys that everybody just wants to see win because of what he's gone through with the Jags. He had a couple good seasons, but we just wanted him to be great because we see his talent. His eye test is amazing. Went through the same thing with the Bears. Now, we were hoping that going to, a team that was just in the Super Bowl, high octane, replacing Odell Beckham Jr., and even with Robert Woods leaving, we thought that Allen Robinson was going to have the best year of his career, but 4 weeks in, it's looking pretty sad and quiet out there, right? So, I mean, it's really enough said out there. It's an matchup against Dallas. He's going up against Trayvon Diggs. He's probably going to see different looks. It really, in LA, it's all Cooper Kupp there. So we kind of like DJ Moore, we just have to throw it up, hope and pray that he finally turns around, but we'll see. And then last but not least, Drake London, my rookie starlet. Tough matchup based on the talent that Tampa Bay actually has on paper, but this is actually one of the big things I've realized in the past couple of years and in my experience in fantasy football is even in a really, 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 really bad matchup, okay? The team is going to get blown out regardless if a team is up 20, 15, 2 touchdowns even, right? The team who is down they're going to get a lot of garbage time, which we all know about. And I think that for this week, at least, that's going to be the situation. I think Drake London, again, it's going to be a tough matchup. I think he's going to see a fair share of targets. He might even catch a touchdown, and who knows, you might see a little Marcus Mariota magic. But for the most part, I think I'm going to give the advantage to no one. It's actually kind of even there. I think really it's going to come down to who scores more points between T. Higgins and Marquise Brown.
Yeah.
I really don't know. Quite frankly, it really is a toss-up. With the other wide receivers, you kind of just got to hope that your guy gets your 10 to 15 points maybe. Going on to tight end, another one of my guys, Dallas Goedert, number 8 tight end on the year, going up against Arizona. Elite matchup. Arizona, for a couple years now, actually has been a bottom 3 team against tight ends. And, of course, with that over-under, right, a good indication on whether, some teams are going to put up a lot of points. I think that Dallas Goedert definitely is going to go ahead and do his thing. And that's going up against, the picture of the face of tight ends, right? We have Travis Kelce, the tight end number 1, right? Who would have thought going up against the Las Vegas Raiders? Another enough said type of matchup. Look, as much as I love Dallas Goedert and I want to go ahead and give Rosie the benefit of the doubt here with the matchup and everything, Travis Kelce is Travis Kelce. We're possibly looking at the best tight end in the history of the league. So, we're going to give that advantage to Max, which is where I think it kind of is starting to get a little bit tight here towards the bottom, right? Now, down, we're looking at, I'm going to actually jump to kicker really quickly. We have Daniel Carson, number 2 kicker. this year in fantasy going up against Casey. I mean, again, it has a high over under. It's going to be a high scoring game. So they're definitely going to go ahead and hope at least that, they want to score touchdowns, but we're hoping, I actually have Daniel Carson in a lot of leagues. We're hoping that he gets his usual 10 to 15 points, kind of acts as that like kicker flex, which is what we're looking for kickers on high octane offenses. On the other hand, for Max, he has Brandon McManus versus my boys again tonight. I mean, it's a low total. The Broncos look anemic. They're going against my boys who have a pretty solid defense. I don't see too much coming out of there, so I'm definitely going to go ahead and give the edge to Michael Rosales. Now, next, I know I kind of skipped over this, was the flex position, right? Which is where we have Jamal Williams, right? Hard knock superstar, right? The grittiest of gritty, right?
The sexiest.
Up against going up against the rookie starlet. Shout out to Austin Cranz, a guy that he definitely has gotten me to be a stan of, which is Breece Hall. I mean, look, starting with Jamal Williams, he definitely did his thing last week. 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards on the ground, had that one popper touchdown that, I mean, we love to see guys like that win. Right. And then again, with Breece Hall, the thing is with him is even if he doesn't score touchdowns, I mean, I'm looking at last week he had 2 catches for 12 yards. Usually has a little bit more in regards to the receiving work. But even he had a touchdown this week. And then he also had 17 rushes for 66 yards. And really in general, I mean, look, week 4, 15 points, week 3, 15 points, week 2, 12 points, week 1, 10 points. It's kind of, he's really starting to kind of run away with that backfield. And I mean, if the Jets kind of have that Detroit Lions turnaround on offense, who knows what could happen over there in East Rutherford, right? So I think I'm definitely going to go ahead and have to give the slight edge to Max Brown with Breece Hall. And then last but not least, right, we are going to go over the defenses. We have the Titans, right, who are going up against the Washington Commanders. I think it's a good matchup because former quarterback Carson Wentz is the quarterback for the Commanders, so there's always a high chance of some turnovers, right? Couple pick sixes, fumble sixes, even maybe. And then of course Max has the Rams who are going up against Dallas, which most people a couple weeks ago, at least me, because I like to look ahead a couple weeks, would have thought was a good matchup, but Cooper Rush looks more than competent. He has CeeDee Lamb looking like an alpha. He has that offense moving down the field. He's not really throwing a whole bunch of picks. He's 4-0 in his starts. So I definitely think I'm going to give the edge to Rosales when it comes to defense. So look, I think the game's going to be pretty even, as of course the projections even say. But I'm going to go ahead and give the edge and the advantage to Michael Rosales. And this is simply no offense, Brown. I know based on the way that I was speaking, it kind of seemed like I was leaning towards your side, but it is simply based upon the upside of Josh Allen and Austin Eckler, because with those 2 players, you can potentially get 40, and maybe if it gets really crazy, 90 to 100, which can outscore even some teams on a bad week. So yeah, that's my piece on Max versus Rosie. What do you guys think?
So I think I'm going to go ahead and also pick Michael this week, but it's really close because I think that Sunday night Baltimore versus Cincy game is going to be a massive explosion game. And just Joe Burrow and T. Higgins, I love T. Higgins. I was saying beginning of the season, like that guy is easily going to be top 12, top 10. And I think that this is the game where he gets right and just sees a ton of work and just has an explosion game. And so Max with that little stack, it makes it really close, but I'm going to have to give Mike the edge too, just because of Josh Allen. He did it to me in our matchup, and I just think he's too OP, man.
I wasn't surprised by both of you fine gentlemen. You high intellect.
Peace out, guys.
You high intellect football guys. I knew you guys were going to pick me, honestly, in this one. I'll say, though, I'm petrified for this Joe Burrow T. Higgins match like stack. I think they're going to go absolutely off. I had so many T. Higgins shares. I'm really excited. He's better than Jamar Chase this year. I love Jamar Chase. He's one of my favorite guys, but he's producing in every aspect. He has more numbers than him, more fantasy points, everything. He's just a better receiver right now. Granted, that's because Jamar has all this attention now. He's the wide receiver 1. He got a target on his back, The one thing that I will say is Najee Harris to me is a really, really big bad spot for Max because of the matchup, as well as Kenny Pickett being there. Najee Harris got 0 targets when Kenny Pickett got in the game, which is very concerning to me. I don't know if he's going to get that dump off work. We'll see how things shape up there. And then the only other thing I would say is I do not know if I'm going to start DJ Moore this week. I might move him to the bench, and I was thinking about potentially picking up Zay Jones for the Jaguars because I know he's healthy this week. He's kind of the wide receiver 2 in Jacksonville. They play the Texans. So that's really the only pivot I've had an idea of so far. But yeah, other than that, I'm going to go with myself in this matchup.
All right.
Yep.
All right. So
yeah, Cranz.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take the next matchup, and then we'll transition into your last matchup, Rosie. So my next matchup is Vega versus Dan. Dun dun dun. This is a great matchup. Newly coined Los Angeles. Huge trade, made big waves amongst the league. Dan went ahead and traded Leonard Fournette and Mike Williams for Keenan Allen, Justin Herbert, and who else?
Alan Lazard.
And Alan Lazard. Yeah, I mean, will Keenan play? That is a really big question mark for Dan. But if it does, Keenan, when he plays, has been the wide receiver 1 over Mike Williams. I personally thought at the beginning of the year that Mike Williams was going to slowly progress and take over those numbers. He's been putting up numbers with Keenan out, so we'll see what happens when Keenan comes back. If he's rusty, if he's hampered, we'll see. Overall, Dan has a really big hill to overcome. Vega is projected to score the most points in the week by like a ton. His team is just looking like a super. He's undefeated. And if I'm just going to go over the matchups, I mean, they're very close across the board. I just think that from a fantasy production perspective, Vegas team has been so consistent. So Justin Herbert versus Cleveland. It's an okay matchup. Justin Herbert has been that trade is crazy. Like Rosie was saying in the chat, Justin Herbert has looked solid even with the rib injury. The more healthy he gets, the better he's going to be. With Keenan coming back, he's just going to get better. He's going to have more options to throw the ball to. He's going to get better. Cleveland is not the greatest matchup, but I'm not really looking too much into matchups in terms of Herbert or Lamar on the other side. I know, unless it's like a really tough matchup like last week versus Baltimore. So I'm looking at Justin Herbert to produce and have a solid outing. But Lamar Jackson, like I said, this Baltimore-Cincy game is going to be crazy. I think Lamar is going to go for 4 touchdowns. He might have 100 yards on the ground. Like, this game is going to be crazy. We're going to see fireworks. He might have to get it done himself if Mr. Rashad Bateman's out. So expect the rushing to be crazy. I think that I personally, just because I think that game is going to be so crazy, I'm going to give the slight edge to Lamar Jackson. But I think that it is really close. On the ground, we have Mr. Christian McCaffrey versus San Francisco. Now, this is a really tough matchup. I have some notes on it that I'll go into later for this game, but it's a tough matchup. You're playing Christian McCaffrey, but yeesh, man. San Francisco's nasty on defense. And then you got Saquon, who is looking like it doesn't matter who he plays against. I know in week 2 he kind of had a dud, but it's looking like they're going to get him involved in any way they can. He is the star piece of their offense. He's going to catch the ball. He's going to get all the rushing attempts. And Green Bay, the matchup there is a huge underdog for the Giants, which means Saquon could catch a ton of balls, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to be as crazy of an underdog. I think the game is going to be a little bit closer than the spread says. So I think Saquon's going to get work. I'm going to say they're even, but I would like to give the edge to Saquon there. And then at the RB2 spot, we got AJ Dillon versus James Conner. I was saying in chat after this trade, downgrading from Leonard Fournette to AJ Dillon is a lot bigger of a downgrade to me than some other people might think. However, because of the game script, and I did just allude to the fact that I think it'll be closer, but however, due to the game script, I will agree with what Rosie said earlier in the podcast about how this is an AJ Dillon type game script where they're going to go up and they're going to feed AJ Dillon. He's going to batter them down. And then James Conner versus Philly. It is theoretically a good matchup, but we haven't seen James Conner get a touchdown on every other touch like we thought he was going to do and how he was last year. So I have been a little bit sketched out with James Conner. Maybe it was just a byproduct of the injury, and I don't know what it is, but we'll see how he is moving forward. I would potentially like to rank them even though James Conner is going to be. He technically is the one, whereas AJ Dillon has to deal with Aaron Jones. But AJ Dillon just has a good game script. James Conner, he has a good game script, but he hasn't been looking like the James Conner from last year. Through the air, we got Tyreek Hill versus Cooper Kupp, an absolutely super smash matchup at wide receiver. This is interesting because, like you alluded to, the Jets kind of have some lockdown corners, and it's going to be interesting to see what Tyreek does. I know Tyreek is most likely going to, I mean, he was in a press conference and somebody asked him, hey, I know you've been talking about you could put up numbers with anybody. You're going to put up numbers. And he looked him dead in the eyes and said, I'll put up numbers with you. So I think Tyreek Hill is going to go for another 100-yard game, especially if Jalen Waddle is a little bit banged up, a little bit limited. And then Cooper Kupp, it's a mid-tier matchup. Dallas is, their defense has looked pretty solid. And of course, Trayvon Diggs, he loves to give up yards, but he gets interceptions, whatever everybody likes to say about him. He hasn't looked a lot better this year, but Kupp is a nightmare. He's going to get his 20, 30 points, whatever it may be. So I really think that's really even. I really do think that's even. The one thing I will say is that Cooper Kupp is just going to have that more of a reliability than Tyreek Hill. Although we have seen Tyreek Hill be really reliable, we just don't know what the case is with Teddy Two Gloves, Teddy Bridgewater coming in. Then we got, moving on to the second wide receiver spot, we got Keenan Allen versus Amari Cooper. I mean, if Keenan Allen plays, I'm going to give him the edge. Amari Cooper had a good pop game on that Thursday Night Football game, but when you have Jacoby Brisket, muffin meathead at quarterback, you never know what you're going to get. He looked amazing on that Thursday Night Football game, and then came out last week and threw a dud to Cooper, and he was just missing balls all over the place. So Keenan plays, it's definitely going to go towards Keenan, but if he doesn't play, Amari Cooper is definitely looking better than the options that Dan has to slot in there. And that could be very interesting. I mean, he has Brandon Ayuk on the bench, who I like, but with Debo's resurgence, he may not get what we are typically used to with Jimmy G to Ayuk type. So I don't know. We'll see what happens there. Then moving on to the third receiver spot, Thielen and Jeudy, I'm putting them equal. I think they are both in very, very similar positions where they are technically the second receivers on their teams. They could see volume. They could sneak into the end zone. Jeudy is a little bit more spry. He can get those deep down the field balls from Russ, but Thielen has a better connection with his quarterback in Kirk. He could get into the end zone. They both have really, really not great matchups. Like Rosie said, Chicago might be a fluke bad matchup. So maybe Thielen sees a little bit more success than Jeudy against the Colts. But I'm going to set those as even. I think it is going to be, they could both see 10 points, but there is the potential one of them sneaks in and gets 16 to 20. And then at tight end, Darren Waller versus Kittle. I'm just going to go ahead and say Waller is better than Kittle. We all want Kittle to succeed, but you sent that tweet, that funny meme about how Kittle is now the left guard, even though he's one of the most explosive, talented tight ends in the league. And Darren Waller, we know he's going to get his. He is one of the funnels in that offense. They both have good matchups. Darren Waller has a slightly better matchup in terms of game script because going up against KC, they're going to have to throw a lot. And George Kittle has a good matchup against Carolina, but I have a feeling that game is going to run away from Carolina, and they're going to be running the ball a lot. So, and then my last thing I will say is that in the flex, Vega has a miles better pick for this game. He's got Mr. Miles Sanders, who is miles better than Alan Lazard in the flex, in my opinion, this week. Alan Lazard is dealing with a little bit of injury. They've been him and Aaron Rodgers haven't been able to get on the same page. They seem like they're picking it up, but Romeo Doubs really is getting the lion's share there. And Miles Sanders has looked like a stud. He's getting like I can't remember what the percentage of running back touches is on the ground. It's a really high percentage, like 60 something percent. And that's really crazy to say when Jalen Hurts is also getting like 30%. So he, in terms of the actual running backs, is getting most of the touches. Boston Scott was banged up last week, didn't play with a rib injury. If he's not back again, Miles Sanders is going to pop off. So I'm definitely giving the edge there to Vega. And if I'm choosing, it's sad to say, but I think Vega's going to stay undefeated and take a dub on Los Angeles, which really sucks. I really hope Dan could pop for 150 and we have another dud week from Vega and give him his first loss of the year. What do you guys think?
I'll keep it short. It is pretty close, especially at that quarterback and running back one position, even at running back two going down. But I think that I am going to give the edge, of course, to Vega just because his team, again, like Cranz said, is too consistent. Also has upside. He's got the quarterback one, the running back one, probably soon to be the wide receiver, if not what he is, the wide receiver one in Cooper Kupp. So, and then he even has it flex, right, Miles Sanders. So, yeah, definitely going with Vega in this one. Sorry about that, Dan.
I'd have to agree with both of you guys here. I'm going to pick Vega most weeks with Lamar, Saquon, and Kupp. It's just really hard to not. That trio is hitting on. It's a trifecta right now, you know? So they're popping. And then on top of that, Keenan Allen just reported less than an hour ago, DNP again today. So DNP both days. He's 100% going to be out this week. He for sure messed up that hamstring again. So yeah, I'm choosing Vega there. Excellent breakdown, Cranz. And then with that being said, I will move on to the last matchup in the Schwep universe. Try to speed things up a little bit. Our last matchup is Mr. Lior Zvi, Mr. Owen 4. Hello, Owen. How are you? So Zvi, who's 0-4, versus Kyle, who's 2-2. Quarterback battle, Jared Goff. What are you doing, Zvi, bro? Why did you do this trade, bro? Jared Goff versus Mahomes. I get it. Goff's a QB5 right now. It's really juiced up because of the matchups. But I'm not really going to touch too much on it. Kyle's got the advantage there. Mahomes is an absolute stud. Vegas sucks on the secondary side of things, and we just saw them decimate the Bucs. I really think Mahomes has got the advantage there. Shouldn't have made that trade, buddy. Jared Goff's going to bite you in the ass. Watch. Running back wise, we got Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara versus Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb. Dalvin Cook, I love the matchup this week. Chicago ranks very, very low versus the rush. They're allowing 183 yards per game on the ground. The volume isn't as high as we'd liked it as in past years, touches-wise, and he hasn't been targeted too heavy in the pass game as well. The Vikings' offense has just been not as consistent. It looks like they're struggling a little bit to find their identity. I think Dalvin Cook, to really pay off, is just going to have to find the end zone more. He needs to score more touchdowns if he's not going to get as many touches or as many passes as he has. And then Alvin Kamara, I love the matchup this week. I'm so happy. I have him in my biggest money league. The matchup is incredible versus Seattle. We've seen running backs pop off versus them. We saw Jamal Williams do it. So Alvin Kamara, another really good matchup for Zvi there. And he's full health supposedly, so he should be really good there. And then on Kyle's side of the ball, Derrick Henry, he's going up against the Commanders over under 42.5. Commanders are plus 1.5 right now. Derrick Henry had 22 touches for 114 yards and a touchdown last week, so he's finally getting that ball. He also had 5 and 6 targets the last 2 weeks, which is really surprising. He's finally getting a little bit of passing work that I know fantasy gurus have been really wanting him to get there. Middle of the pack matchup, but he's an RB1 this week. He's finally turning things around, so Derrick Henry owners are for sure going to be happy there. And then Nick Chubb, he's an absolute monster. I'm super happy. He fell to me to the 112 in our 12-man league. He's the RB1 so far. Really not much to say about him. He's the most efficient guy with his touches ever right now. 6.2 yards per carry last week. 19 for 118 and 1. And the Chargers are susceptible to the run. Dameon Pierce went for 14 for 131 and 1 last week. So he's a high-end RB1. Listen, Zvi's matchups are incredible here, but those running backs haven't produced enough for me to just automatically give him the advantage there. Like I said, I love the matchups, but I'm going to have to go with Kyle here for the advantage at the running back position, because Nick Chubb is proving to me every week why he is Nick Chubb, and Derrick Henry is finally turning things around this week. So I'm going to give the advantage to Kyle there. And then going over to the wide receiver side of things, we've got Mike Williams, Chris Olave, and Romeo Doubs. God, Zvi, your team is just so mids, my friend. Mike Williams, wide receiver 20 so far. he's got a good matchup this week, especially with Keenan being out. He's that wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside right now. I really like him. I have him in another league as well. So good scoop for now. I think Zvi will regret that trade in the future when Keenan Allen is back by like week 7, week 8, especially with Zvi being 0-4 and the punishment being an ESPN body photo shoot. Like, I don't know why you did that trade, guy. And then going over to Olave. Olave's been the guy this year. He's been that rookie wide receiver who's really getting that job done. Even with Jameis out last week, Andy Dalton was really able to get it going with him. Granted, I take his stat line last week kind of with a grain of salt because everything really happened towards the end of the game there. It was a lot of last minute. It was a last minute bomb. The touchdown was like kind of at the end of the game. So it was last minute. However, numbers, I got to go with the numbers here. He's, as of right now, to me, he's a wide receiver 2 with some pretty good upside until Michael Thomas is back, because I think he's going to be out this week with the toe injury. And then Romeo Doubs, Ray all preseason in Dynasty. Watch out. He's going to be the guy. We really thought Christian Watson was going to be that guy, but he hasn't been so far. He's been struggling with injuries and stuff like that. So Doubs is getting it done. He's looking like the wide receiver 1 there a bit. I know Alan Lazard is playing with, like, kind of feeding off of him. They kind of feed off each other there. It's just that the Packers distribute the ball really evenly. And then on top of that, to me, in the red zone, I would probably say that Doubs is the third in the pecking order. I like Lazard more in the red zone to be looked at, and I also like Robert Tonyan. Surprisingly, he's a huge red zone threat there. But Doubs, he's doing great things. I think he's a wide receiver 3 upside this week. Giants are a tougher matchup, but it's not terrible for Zvi. He's working with what he's got, so I got to respect him there. And then on Kyle's side of the ball, he just has a plethora of wide receivers. Christian Kirk, he's been a guy on our show. We love him so much. He's just the wide receiver 1 last week. He did have a bust last week, but he had 9 targets. So I'm a huge target guy. I always fight for the targets. That's why I kind of constructed my roster the way I did this year with Brandon Cooks, DJ Moore, and the prediction on Hollywood Brown. I was chasing the targets. It hasn't really paid off this year so far with DJ Moore and Cooks. But C. Kirk is going to be the wide receiver 1 always there. I love the targets. Jaguars defense is really good, so they're going to have the ball a lot. I love them there. DK Metcalf, he was carted off last week. He's out for the season. No, I'm just kidding. He had to go take a shit. So yeah, DK Metcalf, he's finally looking like the wide receiver 1 that we expected. I know the last couple of weeks we've been pretty critical on him, Cranz, but I really like Metcalf. 12 and 10 targets the last 2 weeks, 7 for 149 last week. He's going to see a lot of Marshawn Lattimore, but we just saw J. Jeff absolutely cook that boy. He put him on some skates a lot of the time. I don't know if you guys saw J. Jeff's Instagram post. He's so clean with it. He stepped over him and he put the Allen Iverson picture. He's just a savage, bro. One of my favorite players. I know he's your favorite player, Cranz. So DK Metcalf, he's a wide receiver 1 right now. And I think everybody missed the buy low window on Metcalf. I think moving forward, he's going to be really, really consistent. And then Mike Evans, bro, we saw him last week. Can't guard Mike. He's just that guy. I love him. I'm stealing that name from Michael Thomas. You're not can't guard Mike. Mike Evans is can't guard Mike. That's Brady's favorite guy in the red zone. It's just throw up and get it every time. I really, really love him. Huge upside this week. Atlanta is a very, very vulnerable matchup. So yeah, I really like him. I've got to give the advantage to Kyle here. His wide receivers are just insane. And he's working with Olave, Doubs. It's good. Like, don't get me wrong, but you're going up against monsters at the receiver position on Kyle. So it's just going to be tough for you to overcome that. And then tight end, Pat Freiermuth versus David Njoku. Muth, he's got a pretty solid game script, I'm predicting, versus like that. And then he did not miss a beat with Kenny Pickett under center. He got 9 targets last week, like 7 of them coming with Pickett. Rookie quarterbacks really tend to feed off of tight ends. So I really like Freiermuth this week. And then David.
Zvi actually dropped Freiermuth for Gerald Everett.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah. So instead of Freiermuth, we got Gerald Everett.
All right. So Gerald Everett, we're speeding it up a little on a little side switcheroo here. Gerald Everett, he's been pretty consistent so far. I know he kind of had a bust. I don't know if it was last week, but 2 weeks ago, he had a little bust. Keenan Allen is out this week, I'm predicting. So all Chargers, Josh Palmer, Gerald Everett, Mike Williams. They do get a little bit of a boost there. I still would prefer Pat Freiermuth in this game, not going to lie. I guess V's just chasing the Chargers still. I don't know why you would have Gerald Everett and Mike Williams in this lineup. I try to avoid that. It's just weird to me. V, you're a bum, my guy. And then David Njoku, sneaky tight end moving forward, 10 and 7 targets the last 2 weeks, and he's a safety blanket for Brisket. So to me, there's no really advantage here. I kind of just mark it as a wash, even with the Everett switch. And then going over to the flex, Leonard Fournette versus Antonio Gibson. This is the one part where Zvi really has that huge advantage over.
Quick question. My fault, brother. Sorry to cut you off, fam. I think J.K. Dobbins is now in flex for Kyle. Obviously, I know these things are subject to change and things like that, but yeah. Okay.
Also, your camera's frozen, so maybe turn it off and turn it back on again. We don't have to edit this. But Leonard Fournette, he's got a great matchup this week. I really like him. I'm expecting 23 plus touches. I think he's going to break that threshold of 22 touches has been his max so far this year. I think V traded for him at a really good time. Like I said, I really disagree with the trade. I vetoed it. I just think it just doesn't make sense to me really for Zvi in a win now situation. And then pivoting over to J.K. Dobbins versus Cincinnati. He did really good last week. I've been a huge J.K. Dobbins fan. I had him keeper his rookie year. I'm a huge believer to him. I fleeced Ray. I traded him in the offseason and gained like a 3rd round pick. Shout out to you, Ray. J.K. Dobbins should do really good this week versus Cincinnati. I think it's going to be just an all-around shootout game, especially with Bateman not being healthy to say. So he might be projected in the target game more, but I'm going to give the advantage to Zvi in that category. Finally, I'm giving an advantage to Zvi. Kyle swept across the board here. Easy prediction for me. Zvi, you're going 0-5, buddy. You're going to remain an 0, and Kyle's going to go to 3-2 here. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
Cranz?
I am going to have to agree. I think it's a pretty easy call. I mean, the name brand, the Gucci on Kyle's side, just beats the little thrift store, little Lave Dubs type of guys. I mean, it's just Mahomes versus Goff. It's just I'm just gonna have to give the dub to Kyle on that one.
And of course, I'll go ahead and add. Of course, I'm gonna go ahead and choose Kyle as well. And I feel like I'm starting to feel like Rosie. I think we're as people who speak to Zvi quite often and regularly, we're actually mad at the moves he's made so far. We're like, what are you doing? Former champion, everything, but shout out to you. You might be going 0-5. You got beat up last week. That's what you get for chatting, but all loves to you. Kyle's got it this week.
So that really does it for the Schwep Universe. Just a quick recap. We all picked Kyle winning. We all picked Vega winning. We both picked Sevilla, me and you, Cranz. Ray did side with Seidenberg there. And then we all picked me. And then you two split on each other. Obviously, you picked yourself. Ray picked himself. And then I believe I sided with Cranz on this one. Yep. Peruvian Voodoo, reverse curse, maybe. You never know.
Reverse Uno card.
Yep. So that is the Schwep Universe this week. So that's a wrap, and let's move on to our next segment. All right, real quick. You can edit this out, Cranz. Should we skip the waiver wire? How are we doing on time?
Yeah, we can skip.
I mean, my shit's gonna be quick, bro. I mean, yeah,
we're at
straight. I don't care.
We're at 147, so we kind of need to like.
Yeah, I prefer skipping it this week.
Okay, so it's up to
you guys.
The locks.
Just transition into
Menta, right?
Well, what about Brown's bets? Is that last?
Well, I'm gonna do Menta because that relates to Schwep, just fantasy, and then we'll just do straight betting.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So let's be quick with it. Let's be quick.
Yeah. So that really wraps it up for the Schwep Universe side of things. I hope you guys enjoyed this new format. It's not as time consuming. And we really are able to group together the meat and potatoes of fantasy there instead of breaking up like wide receiver 2s or wide receiver 3s and like tight end 2s and stuff like that. So with that being said, we're going to get into my favorite segment of the podcast so far, the Menta of the week. Not to brag or anything, but I'm on fire the last 2 weeks. I had Hollywood Brown going off, and then I had Jamal Williams going off last week. So I'm looking like a guy so far. With that being said, I will throw it off to Austin first. Who is your Menta of the week?
All right, my Menta of the week is drum roll, please. T. Higgins. Prime time. Let's get it, Mr. T. Higgins. Listen, he's in a funneled offense. Who do they throw the ball to? They throw the ball to T. Higgins. They throw the ball to Jamar Chase. They got a little tiny bit of Tyler Boyd in there. You saw his little pop game, but come on, man. We know who it is. He's seen 7+ targets in every game that he has played thus far, except for the one where he went out with the concussion. He's played to the end. He's seen 7+ targets. Listen, Baltimore, first, number 1 in yards per catch allowed, last in yards per pass attempts allowed. The Bengals, they are top 10 in pass rate over expectation. This is going to be an absolute sling fest. 48-point over under. We're going to see the ball chucked a ton. There, of course, what are they going up against? Mr. Lamar Jackson, the high-scoring Baltimore Ravens led offense. Putrid defense. They've just been porous through the air. We saw Waddle have 11 for 170 and 2 in the same game that Tyreek Hill saw 11 for 190 and 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, I mean, T. Higgins is going absolutely nuclear this week. I know you probably hate that because of our 12-man matchup, but that's just the way I see it. Shout out to Devin Duvernay as an honorable mention if Rashad Bateman isn't ready to go. Same game, same type of situation. But yeah, T. Higgins is my guy.
I hate that because I go against him in 10-man. I go against him versus you. And then I have him in my biggest money league. So it's like I get the best of both worlds kind of thing and the worst of both worlds, you know? Yeah. So really, really good pick there for your Menta of the week. And then Ray, who is your Menta of the week? I pray you did not take my guy. So let's hear it.
So I got someone who, in the way that I went about picking my guy, is using someone who is kind of inconsistent, but I know is in also a really good spot to go ahead and pop off. And that is going to be Devonta Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, so I know it's nice name brand, but he's also, again, a guy who's been kind of inconsistent. And really, I mean, look, number 28 pass rank per DVOA for Arizona. Arizona, they're going to get smoked. I think that they're going to compete for a little bit, but the mixture of that run game, that read option, and then also what you said, I think Byron Murphy is going to be most likely covering A.J. Brown. And I think this is going to be one of the games where Devonta is allowed to just get loose and get crazy. I'm predicting about 7 to 9 catches, 130 yards, and a touchdown. Really, it just amounts to the Eagles just putting the work on the Cardinals this week, and really that's it.
That is a very interesting Menta right there. With that being said, if Shevil listens to the podcast, so basically you're saying he should put Devonta Smith in his lineup at the flex position over Rashad Penny, no doubt.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Like we said before, I would put Jeff Wilson or Devonta Smith in there, no hesitation over Rashad Penny. I think he's chasing the points from last week there. Plus the matchup is really hard. So I like that Menta of the week. I'm really happy you did not pick my Menta of the week. I really thought you were going to. That's why I was afraid to guess it, because my Menta of the week is on your team, Mr. Raekwon James. My Menta of the week this week is Chris Godwin.
Wow.
He is a certified guy going against Austin. Shout out to my boy Jersey Jerry on Barstool. He follows the signs. I follow the patterns. Listen, Atlanta ranks 25th versus the pass, allowing 260 yards through the air per game. On top of that, they are super, super vulnerable versus the slot. In week 1, Landry went for 7 for 114 yards for them. Jarvis Landry. He's not like that guy anymore. So 7 for 114, that's a thing right there. In week 2, Cooper Kupp went for 11 catches, 108 yards, and 2 touchdowns versus that slot. And then in week 3, Lockett went for 9 for 76. Not a crazy, crazy stat line, but 9 catches on 76 yards. Obviously, the quarterbacks really like targeting the slot versus Atlanta. So I like him this week. On top of that, Russell Gage did re-aggravate his hamstring injury. I have not seen positive news. He is that other slot receiver. They paid him like $9 million in the offseason, but he keeps re-aggravating that hamstring injury. So I do not know if he's going to be out there. And if he is, it's going to be limited. So Chris Godwin's going to be on the field a whole bunch. He got 10 targets in his last week there on his first week back from injury. You absolutely love that. We know he's one of Brady's guys, even though he loves Mike Evans. In the middle of the field, he's always looking for Godwin. Brady loves the slot. Snap shares are going to rise. He was at 83% last week, which is insane after an injury. So all arrows are pointing up there. And it's tied for the third highest over-under this week. So I really, really love Tampa as a whole. Chris Godwin is my Menta of the week. My prediction is over 10 catches, over 100 yards, and a touchdown. So in a full PPR league, you're looking at about 26 to 28 points with the bonus, maybe even almost a 30 bomb. So Chris Godwin is my Menta of the week.
Solid.
Not a fan of that one.
Yep, I know you wouldn't be. With that being said, we're moving on to a new segment, one of my most exciting segments that I've been really looking forward to. The man, the myth, the legend has come out of retirement. Browns Bets is officially back in business. He had a little rough patch last season. I know he was doing some NBA. It might have been so rough that it put him out of business. It discouraged him. But he's been a moneymaker. He's seen the board clear as day in primetime games. He has not missed a single primetime pick besides week 1 opener. So he's on fire this week. With that being said, I'm going to throw it over to Mr. Max Isaac Brown. Brown's Bets, it is good to hear from you. How are you doing today? I hope everything is well. Let's hear it.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Schwep Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Brown's Bets, and I'll be giving you all of your gambling advice for this upcoming week. On this week's slate, I have 4 bets. 3 straight bets, 1 parlay. Let's start. First game I'm taking is the over 42 in the Thursday Night Football game, Broncos-Colts. Give me the over 42 in that. Both teams, yes, have running backs out. That's fine. Amazon Prime, Jeff Bezos, touchdowns. No problem. Next bet I have. We're going to go to Miami versus the New York Jets. Give me the Jets plus 3.5 in this one. Just all the money's on the Dolphins. The line should be a little bit more, I would think, but Teddy Two Gloves is in, so it makes sense. So give me the Jets plus 3.5. The next bet I have is Chargers minus 2.5 versus the Cleveland Browns. The Chargers are 3-1 this year against the spread. The Browns are not really that good of a team. Give me the Chargers minus 2.5. Now the Hungry Dog Parlay. 3-team parlay plus 2,500. Here it is. Lions money line versus the New England Patriots. Give me that. Next bet. The Arizona Cardinals versus the Philadelphia Eagles. You guys are going to watch Kyler Murray fling against the Eagles. Give the Eagles their first loss. Cardinals money line. Last but not least, Sunday Night Football. Bengals Ravens. Yep, we're taking the underdog. Bengals. Joey B is who we're taking. 10 to win 250. That could change your day, make you a happy guy. Take it, please. I'll be back with more bets next week. Browns Bets, over and out. Book it.
And there you have it, folks. The man, the myth, the legend has popped out of retirement. He blessed you guys with his beautiful physique, his sexy charisma. Browns Bets is back. He will be a weekly addition to the podcast. So if you're a gambling man like me and Ray are, I know Cranz isn't too much into it, but he knows football. So if he wanted to apply himself, he would be active in getting that bread. So if you guys like betting and you support Browns Bets, make sure to tune into the Schwep Fantasy Football Podcast every week, as Browns Bets will be here every single week making those picks and making you guys money. With that being said, we are going to open up the gambling floor here a little bit. We are going to dabble into the gambling world. That's the advantage of not really going over the full NFL slate. So we're going to give our locks of the week. With that being said, who wants to give the first lock?
I'm ready to go. Let's go. So look, this is actually shout out to Max for the past couple of weeks. I think he's been paying for a couple of my dinners and a couple of my lunches. I think I'm trying to keep that streak going, right? So with my lock, I know usually I like to do teasers, but we're talking straight bets, real bets, right? I'm gonna go with the Texans +7 at Jacksonville. And when I tell you guys this is a lock, look at me. I'm telling you, if this was a betting movie and I was trying to win millionaires and everything money, that I would be that guy in that movie getting everybody. Because look, Houston's 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 versus the Jags, 6-1 in the last 7 while on the road versus the Jags. So really, they're really just in a good spot to, I want to say, number one, prove all the doubters wrong. Right. And then number two, I mean, a lot of people aren't going to think they're going to compete. +7 against the Jags, who are a pretty new team in regards to being competitive. And I think the Jags are really just going to start to cool down. My honorable mention, if you guys want to go ahead and put this on a lay, Eagles -5, like I told you guys a couple minutes ago. Eagles are putting the work on the Cardinals. Let's get it.
All right. I like that. I'm a Jags fan this year, so I hope they put a beat down, and it's I don't want to root against you, but I'm hoping that the Jaguars pop out. But I'll move into mine, and I said I don't like your Menta of the week, Rosie, and it wasn't necessarily because he goes up against me, but because my lock of the week is, and I have two. One of mine is Atlanta +9, and I just think that with Brady banged up, he says he's going to play, but with Brady banged up, and Atlanta having like a sneaky solid offense, even with some, that comeback against the Rams in certain games like that. I really think that this game is going to be a lot closer than a huge +9 spread like Vegas thinks it's going to be. Atlanta, and this is shout out to Ray, Atlanta is 11th overall in their DVOA overall. And that's mainly because of their offense. They've looked a lot more solid on offense this year. Yes, they're going to give up points to Brady, but I think that they may be able to compete. They have been beaten by the Bucs in previous years, but I think that Brady, with everything that's going on in terms of his personal life, the injuries, and where Atlanta is at this year in terms of their offensive efficiency, I think that they closed the gap on that +9. And so my second lock, which is just crazy to me, is San Francisco -6.5. They may be -7, -6.5, where depending where you look. But listen, Carolina ranks 28th overall DVOA. They are absolutely putrid. And not to mention the fact that San Francisco is 3rd in allowed yards per attempt in the passing game at 5, and they are 3rd in sacks with 15. And they're 1st in allowed yards per carry at just 2.9 on the season. They've only given up 2 rushing touchdowns. So I really think they are going to absolutely beat the brakes off of Carolina. Carolina couldn't even put up more than 16 on the Cardinals last week. I think the -6.5 is just a huge disrespect to the San Francisco 49ers. They just beat the Rams in a handed win. So yeah, that's my other lock. I want to give a mini shout out to Kansas City -7 at home versus the Raiders, because I mean it's Kansas City and Mahomes, so that could be a blowout too.
Yes, sir. I really like those picks. I know you said Brady's personal life. Hey, Giselle, what it is, my boy Ray-Bans, he's a little single guy over here, man. Holla, my boy. If Brady's not putting in that work, man, my dog could get you right. So I love those picks. So Cranz, you had San Francisco with the spread and you had Atlanta with the spread. I really like the Atlanta bet. I think it's a sharp bet. And then I really like your Texans bet. I think that the Jags are just kind of hyped right now, especially because of the beginning of that game versus the Eagles. I think they're really being juiced. And then they kind of fell apart there and they showed maybe their true form. Like, yeah, they have a better defense and like their offense is finally like starting to learn. But I really think a touchdown is a lot, especially for a team like Houston, who's always keeping themselves in the game, So I think that's a really sharp pick there. And then my 2 locks of the week, not a homer pick, I promise, but the Miami Dolphins -3. They're 3-1 versus the spread. I know I am fading the legend, the myth, Browns bets. He does have the Jets with the spread as one of his locks this week. Unfortunately, Max, I got to be fading you here. I just think this is a prime position for the Dolphins defense to really, really have a solid game plan around them. Granted, our corners are really banged up right now, but I think that gives us the perfect position to have our safety sit back all game, because the only thing the Jets do is they feed off of big plays. That is the only way that they're moving the ball. They're not really efficient running the ball that much. The O-line is really, really bad there right now. Breece Hall, he's getting his touches towards the goal line. That's really how he's getting his fantasy work and through the pass game. So I just think that the safeties are going to sit back a lot to protect that big playability. And that's how they're going to protect those banged up young corners. And our D-line has been really, really impressive. Melvin Ingram's an absolute monster. I think he's going to give Zach Wilson and the Jets a really big problem there versus a mashed up O-line. So I just really think our defense is really going to control the pace of this game. And then on top of that, our offense is elite, regardless of who's under center, Teddy B or Tua. I think that we have the ceiling to pop off any single game. And I've heard great reports out of Miami that all of the receivers are loving the way practice has turned out this week with Teddy Bridgewater. Maybe he looked kind of anemic because they kind of just threw him in the game last week versus Cincinnati. Not really sure there, but I'm really confident in the Dolphins this week at -3. So that's one of my locks this week. And then my other lock this week is the Titans versus the Commanders at -1.5. I just have no confidence in the Commanders' offense whatsoever. Week 3, they scored 8 points on the Eagles, and Week 4, they scored 10 on the Cowboys. It's just, they're really, really bad to me, especially with Jahan Dotson now. He has 3 touchdowns in 4 games, so that's another weapon gone for the Commanders. The D-line of the Titans is not that bad. I think they're really going to control the pace of this game. Wentz is the most sacked quarterback in the league so far. The Eagles sacked him, I think, 9 times in a single game, which is really, really crazy. So, yeah, I think that the Titans are just going to control the pace. Both of my picks here are more confidence in the defenses. On top of that, their offenses can do good things. The Titans had like 27 points versus the Colts, and then they had almost 30 points versus the Raiders. So they're capable of scoring points. I know we saw them do really, really bad versus the Bills. It was kind of an anomaly week, I guess. They got smacked in the face right away. But yeah, Titans -1.5 and Dolphins -3 are my locks. Ray, did you have one more lock?
I think I gave 2. It was the Texans +7 and the Eagles -5.
Yeah, he gave all of them.
So you did throw the Eagles in there. I did forget about that. And then so for the Lay of Dreams, we're just going to include those 6 picks. And then Ray and I were tasked with picking an underdog this week. This one for my underdog, I'm going with Detroit money line here. I do not have any confidence in New England this week with Zappy under center. I just think Detroit, regardless of their regardless of Detroit's struggles on defense, their offense is really potent. Surprisingly, they have the number 1 offense in the league right now. They're averaging the most yards per game. Jared Goff is in his bag. Just relax. Don't get too juiced up on that. But I think that they're a solid offense. They really know their roles. They know the way they're supposed to play their offense, and they're not afraid to call big plays in big moments. So, and on top of that, New England's offense in the first place isn't even that potent. So a banged up defense in Detroit versus a not potent offense in New England. I just have to go with the money line here of Detroit. So that's my underdog pick of the week to include in our Lay of Dreams.
And for me, my underdog of the week is actually going to be the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Ravens. And is this a win-loss underdog? Is this against the spread?
No, you can just do money line since it's a dog. We'd rather pick the money line because the odds are better for us.
Yeah. So I mean, look, it's the Bengals. It's Sunday Night Football, prime time. Lamar Jackson. I mean, look, we're all from South Florida. We want to see Action Jackson go crazy, which he might. But I just think that this is a game where the Bengals are going to win because their offense seems to be turning it around. I really love, and I think this is going to be something that's going to be unspoken of now, but a big part of how the Bengals are going to make a deep run later on is their involvement of Joe Mixon in the offense. I think they're doing themselves a good job and a service, I want to say, by involving him because coming out of college, right, he was really good at pass catching. First, 5-6 years, he hasn't been too involved here and there. But lately, I just feel like things are going to start coming around. Jamar Chase has had an absolute off year, even though we're still producing. If T. Higgins is going off, Joe Mixon's playing well. Jamar Chase isn't even playing as well as he usually is. I mean, and Joe Burrow is also getting healthy and figuring everything out again. They can only go up. And I just think with the Ravens, they've been really banged up the past couple years. So they're not, even though we know they're still good, they got Action Jackson. He's an absolute NFL street type game breaker. But at the end of the day, I think that the Bengals are going to have just a complete, I want to say, offensive, not overhaul or in the way that they're playing and their playing style, but just all systems go. It's going to be not run here, run. It's going to say snap the ball, whatever's open, I'm throwing it to you. Their defense is terrible. We're moving down the field. So yeah.
I had a feeling Ray was going to pick them just because he was riding them a little too hard versus the Dolphins last week, man. He was kind of disrespecting us. So I had a feeling that Ray was really going to pick the Bengals on that one. I love that pick. So starting back up, Brown does have the Bengals as well as one of his picks. So Ray, you're riding with Brown on that one. We really love that.
Hey, mine stink alike.
Yep. So that is our lay of dreams. We've got Detroit, we've got the Bengals, and then we've got our 6 locks that we all posted there. So if you want to ride with us, if you want to be team rider of the Schwep Fantasy Football Podcast, then just ride with us, man. Get on that journey, and hopefully we can all win some money this weekend, you know? With that being said, that wraps up really about everything. Let's just get into a little Schwep Drama Island a little bit, and then we can wrap this baby up. Obviously, the main Schwep Drama Island focal point is going to be the first trade of the season that took place. It was between Mr. Kings V, who is 0-4, and he traded with Mr. Daniel Chiarelli. Daniel absolutely fleeced this kid, in my opinion. Maybe you guys have some different opinions. So the original trade was V was gaining Leonard Fournette and Mike Williams, and he was getting back Keenan Allen, and Daniel was getting Keenan Allen, Justin Herbert, and Olave. The league pretty much vetoed that. Ray was one of the big swing votes there. Sevilla changed his vote. Seidenberg vetoed it. So that one got vetoed really quickly off the charts. And then they substituted it, and they did the same trade. However, this time they swapped out Olave for Alan Lazard. It came down to a 4-5 vote. It was very close yet again. So what are your guys' thoughts on the trade that took place?
I mean, you guys know I think Mike Williams has the potential to be more of a guy this year. So you know, the trade of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. I mean, when you're trading for a premium piece like Leonard Fournette, you got to give up some value there. And I think Leonard Fournette is really going to do some work for Zvi. He was a trade target of mine going into this week. If you're on, if you started off the year slow or needed some running back help. And I think it's a really big downgrade for Dan. Giving up Justin Herbert sucks, but switching it from Olave to Lazard, I think the trade is somewhat even. Like, I don't want to say that it's as much of a fleece as you say. I just personally think that when you are trading for a premium asset like Fournette, you have to give up a little bit more value in order to get, and that's what Lazard kind of cost him. Was the Lazard piece was that extra little bit to get a running back from Dan. I will say Zvi might have some salt in his veins because he doesn't have Rashad White. So if anything were to happen to Leonard Fournette, he doesn't have that premium handcuff, and that will really hurt him.
And with me, at first I was a really big hater on that trade because I told everyone this year I'm not just letting trades go by just because we're cool outside of fantasy, which I am with everyone, right? But really, the trade was pretty solid. I understand now. I'm literally looking at Dan's team as we speak. I understand why he did it, and I kind of felt his pain, which is the struggle at quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. He had Kirk Cousins, who we thought, right, alluding to what Cranz was on the past couple of years, actually, with Kirk Cousins being, a guy who's going to get you 20, 25, maybe on a crazy week 30, but it just hasn't been that way this year. And even, in games where Justin Jefferson's going crazy, we might not get a 25 or 30 from Kirk. So I've been in struggles in multiple leagues in the past where I think my depth at running back and wide receiver is going to hold me down. But if my quarterback, and this is a rule of thumb, right? If my quarterback does not consistently get me 20 points every single week, even on a bad week, what am I doing? And I think that's why Dan went ahead and made that little trade. And he did give up Leonard Fournette and Mike Williams, two players who Leonard Fournette's coming off a bounce back week, had a great game, especially with that last minute touchdown, as well as Mike Williams, alluding again to Cranz, his preseason darling. Absolutely bravo to you, my guy. When Keenan comes back, I'm a big Keenan Allen guy, as you guys know. So I think he's going to come back, be great. Alan Lazard is also 2 games, been a wide receiver 2. And then really, I think the big star of this trade here is Justin Herbert, because when you give Dan a team that has Tyreek Hill, Christian McCaffrey, Adam Thielen, who's been a decent wide receiver 2, and Keelan Allen, if he comes back proper, I mean, his team is going to be putting up some pretty solid numbers every single week for the sole fact that Justin Herbert is one of those 25 to 30 guys when healthy.
Yeah, I just think that in a 6-point quarterback league, like having Josh Allen and knowing that he's been the reason I've won like 2 or 3, like all of my games this season, having that advantage is just so absurd. And Daniel told me on the phone today, he offered Zvi Kirk Cousins in the trade as well. And Zvi was like, nah, I'm good. Like, why would you not just want another quarterback in your trade? Like, you're just a dub, kid. Like, I don't get you, man.
And then on the flip, I didn't want to, I know we're trying to wrap it up. Zvi got a good return, right? He gave up a lot. Really quickly, let me go ahead and see who his quarterback now is. This will be a big determiner. Jared Goff. Let's just go to the next segment because now I'm mad.
He did pick up. He did pick up Trevor Lawrence, which is like there is some consolidation there if T-Law can consistently put up 25-30. Nah, T-Law has put up some fantasy points, man. Last week was the slosh game. Obviously, he fumbled 4 times. Like, he's not gonna fumble 4 times every week. But like, he's probably playing T-Law over Jared Goff on the average.
With V. This team pans out because he's got D-Hop on the bench, Deontay Johnson on the bench, Gabe Davis on the bench. If his team can somehow wake up, like how we try to get him to wake up in the chat sometimes, some of the stuff he says, then I think his team is going to be pretty solid. I'll give him that, though, because his team has a lot of big names on there, a lot.
I get that you're saying that, but he does not have the time. He cannot afford to keep losing games. They're already 0-4. D-Hop doesn't come back till week 7. I just think that, I don't know. It's just really a tough trade for me to get my head around. I get it. Zvi's in win now mode, so you trade Keenan Allen away. But if Keenan Allen's not playing this week, I think he's for sure going to be back next week. Keenan Allen had 4 targets for like 65 yards in the first quarter, week 1, before he got hurt. I think he's automatically going to jump Mike Williams in the depth chart. Mike Williams, even without Keenan Allen there, has been boom or bust. He has not been a consistent guy like we would think he would with Keenan Allen being out. So it's just a risk to me. I get it. I love Cook, Kamara, Fournette. But I don't know, man. It's sketchy business. He's staring down 0-5 in the barrel versus a juggernaut this week in Kyle to me. And then I don't know who his matchup is next week, but it's going to be tough for him, man. It's Cranz. There you go. Another juggernaut at wide receiver. So it's just really hard for me to get my head around this trade. And that really wraps it up. Zvi, I don't mean to like bang on you and shit, but god damn, my boy, you might have really messed up.
Rosie doesn't mean to, but I mean to, and you know why, but we don't have to get into all that.
Exactly. And I believe, gentlemen, that really wraps it up for episode 5 of the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. I had a lot more fun this week in breaking up the segments. We were able to tackle the gambling world a little bit. We were able to go up the Schwep matchups. We were able to dive into a trade that took place. I just had a blast this week. I'm really happy to have Ray on the show now. The trio, like the cohesion's really, really there already, and it just makes it feel like we're just kicking it with the guys more. And it just feels great. I really love the energy that we brought. And then shout out to Brown's Bets, man. I really love that segment on the show. It's a huge part. Brown's a sharp. He got me into gambling way back then. So yeah, just been an all around pleasure. Thank you guys for supporting us. Make sure you like and subscribe the video, and we'll be back next week with some even better content. And with that being said, I'll throw it over to Ray and Austin to say goodbye, and then we are out of here.
Yep. It was a fun week 5. Having a third co-host is amazing. I love the new topic schedule. We're going to get back on this wave, honestly. We were in a similar time frame, but it just felt better being able to go over the Schwep matchups and still break down the players and give all our spew and have those Browns bets and have all our locks of the week and stuff. So I'm really excited. Thank you, everybody, for watching. It's been amazing. Ray and I are about to link up for dinner for the TNF game. We're gonna spew it up even more, but it's been a fun one.
Yeah, and I want to go ahead and thank everyone out there who's watching, and definitely my two brothers right here. This is an everyday type of thing. We talk to each other all day, every day, especially about fantasy or whatever. So, as excited as I am, going back to what you guys said in the piggyback, it really felt like we were literally back at Austin's house over in Cooper and just chilling, just talking about fantasy, which I think what matters most, right? When you have fun doing, something that's when everything else outside doesn't really matter. I was jittery. You guys might hear a little bit of, you feel me, hiccups in my voice from earlier. But as time went by, these guys, these are some pretty smart cats right here. We got the football knowledge rolling. I mean, I'm ready to do this for the rest of the year, in years in the future as well.
Yes, sir, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. Real quick, give me your guys' Thursday night football predictions before we cut it out.
Colts 45-0. Let's get it.
I got Colts in a stinky close one. I'm going Colts 24, Broncos 17.
I disagree with both of you here. I prefer if the Colts won for my friend Ray because that team is miserable. They need some happiness. But I got the Broncos winning this game and kind of a slut and like a grinded out type of game. I got the game going to be 21-17. The Broncos winning this one. So we'll see how everything goes. Everybody enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. And hopefully we can win you guys some money with our locks. Hopefully we gave you the fantasy advice to really supplant you and catch you that W this week. And with that being said, peace out, y'all.
Peace out, everybody.